What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Stat Diggers for UFC Vegas 86. We have... Why am I putting a blank? I just researched. Okay, Joe Pyfer versus Jack Hermansson. I literally just talked about this fight like 10 minutes ago. Really good main event. Jack Hermansson, Joe Pyfer. We have a 14-fight card here. It's been a long day, Weezy. I've been up since 8:30 in the morning. It's been working all day. I'm so tired, but going to push it through it. And then I have to wake up early tomorrow as well. I have my baby has a doctor's appointment, his 2-month appointment. They're going to be getting some shots, so that's going to suck. But yeah, so we're here breaking down this card, 14 fights. I'll be honest, like some of these fights, man, I feel like the matchmakers had a meeting and they were like, let's put together an ass card. I mean, like Zach Palga, Bogdan Guska. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that. I mean, Zach Palga on an event in general is terrible. I mean, what is this? Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. You know, I mean, these are usually you take somebody who's an up-and-comer, you try to build guys up with these two guys, and they're putting them against each other. It's just I'm not really digging this card for the most part. There are a couple fun fights I am looking forward to, but there's a couple fights where I really scratch my head in terms of, you know, why are some of these fights even happening? But as always, we are here with Uncle Weezy. What is up? Are you looking forward to UFC Vegas 86?
Yeah, you know, these are the kind of cards that you are gonna get for as long as the Apex exists as a venue for UFC events. Because like I say, if you were going to, you know, Boise, Idaho with this card, you would enrage the citizens of Idaho, you know, and the surrounding areas of Washington, of Montana, of Colorado and Nebraska and Utah. You know, they'd all be like, what the hell are you doing? You know, how are you giving us Ihor Potieria versus Robert Bryczek as a main event, you know, as a main card fight? But in reality, you know, I'm really not complaining. You know what I mean? Like this, if you're going to give me ass cards, you know, give me some fun fighters. Give me Darrius Flowers. Give me Hader Emil. Give me Carlos Prates. Give me Bolaji Oki. Ige Fili's a fun fight. The main event's a super fun fight. And even Bryczek versus Potieria. I mean, like somebody's going to get served in that one. So I think we're just going to get to enjoy some violence. And there's a couple of decent matchups too on this card. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a Saturday full of fights, and I love watching fights on Saturdays.
Yeah, I spent all day researching this card. It took me a lot longer than usual because I had to look into Hader Emil, had to look into Bogan Gustov quite a bit, some other fighters. Oki was a new one. Prates is a new one. A lot of newcomers, and then that Ihor fight as well. A lot of late notice replacements too, which just makes the card a lot harder to research. But we put in the work, and we are here on a Sunday. Before we get started, guys, if you guys could please do us a favor, leave a like on the video, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Me and Weezy go live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, we're probably going to push it to Monday because I believe next week is the Super Bowl, and literally nobody will be watching us. So we might as well move it to Monday. We'll do the After Clint show on Monday next week, so be aware for that. And other than that, I do want to shout out the Pub Sports Radio Pick'ems contest. It is free to enter, 100% free, $100 to first place week in and week out. Go to pubsportsradio.com and check out the Pick'ems contest. All right, we'll do a quick recap of last night. It was just a complete mess. I ended up 0.77 units. And if I can find the card, so I'll kind of go through it fight by fight. I had the worst start in history to my betting card. Started off with a half unit shot on Thomas Peterson, round 1 or round 2 at plus 220. I didn't hate the bet just because I feel like Thomas Peterson, his win condition was getting the fight down to the mat early and potentially pounding out Pogues or submitting him. And we saw how bad Pogues looked once he got taken down in the first round. It looked like Pogues was kind of even looking for a way out on the ground, but Thomas Peterson was not able to get Pogues down any other time and ended up losing that fight. So down a half unit there, lost a half unit on Julia Stoliarenko, submission round 1. I beat like a whole dollar of line movement, got it at plus 480. And it was there. I mean, she did exactly what I wanted her to do. She went out there, she got the fight down to the mat like 2 times in the first round. And then the armbar was right there, Weezy, in the first round. I think there's a good amount of time left as well. Like I was shocked that Carolina was able to survive, but she did. And And what I'm sad about is I can't believe I wasn't on the Luana Carolina round 2 and round 3 KO. And somebody in the chat last week even called it. They called Luana Carolina the female Neil Magny. And we even joked about it. You were like, yeah, Luana Carolina KO round 3. We joked about it, and then I didn't even think about playing it. So that was a missed opportunity because Luana Carolina round 3 KO was like plus 3,300, just like Neil Magny was. So that sucked. This one hurt. I had the under in the Blake Builder Jung Ung Lee fight. Like, come on, Mark Smith. What more do you want? Blake Builder shelling up on the ground and Jung Ung Lee's beating the crap out of him, unanswered shots. Like another couple punches, and the ref probably stops it. So it missed on the under. And then in the Garimbo Rodrigues fight, just goes to show how my night's going. I had Rodrigues KO1 and then sub sprinkles on Themba, sub 2, sub 3. Themba knocks him out in 10 seconds. Like, what? Like, what sense does that make? In what world is Themba knocking out anybody in the first 20, 30 seconds? So that hurt. And then to somehow make my night even worse, I had a 2-unit bet on Azat Maxim. I bet him at minus 194. Beat a whole $1 of line movement. He closed at minus 300. Maxim goes out there and beats the living crap out of Charles Johnson in the first round. Floors him a couple times in the first. Hurts him multiple times. Everything that was landing was drawing a terrible reaction out of Johnson. And then he also gets a couple deep submissions on him in the first round as well. But Charles Johnson showed his toughness, was able to survive, and then competitive rounds 2, rounds 3. But Charles Johnson clearly won those second 2 rounds. So lost on that. And at that point, I'm like, what the heck? I can't even hit a minus 300 favorite at this point. So at this point, I'm like, dude, like, come on. I need something. And then Molly McCann brings me something. I had Molly McCann inside the distance, half a unit plus 280. That was huge. And then a quarter unit on Molly McCann by sub plus 850. And that was plus 3.5 units. Still in the hole. But hey, I mean, it's a winning bet. I was happy, but not happy enough. And then, and we talked about this last week, Weezy, Charles Racky, he gets it done. He goes in there as a big dog, beats the crap out of Gilbert Urbina, makes him look like the bum, drops him 2 times and knocks him out in the first round. And I cashed the under 2.5 rounds there, minus 150. And then also the Charles Racky by knockout prop, half a unit plus 600, sealed a winning night. The Muradov fight turned into a no contest, lost some sprinkles on Natalia Silva late props. But overall, I mean, it could have been much freaking worse, but hit the Racky KO. That was huge, plus 600. Molly McCann by sub, plus 850. Ended up being like a slight winning night. But man, the problem I'm having so far this year is I'm hitting some crazy sprinkles. I hit the Magny round 3, the McCann sub, the Racky KO. I've hit Robertson round 2, but I'm missing like my most confident plays. Like I was so confident in Azat. I was so confident in 2 weeks ago, the fight finishing in the Dricus fight. I thought, no way, Dricus fight goes 25 minutes. And then I was confident in Waldo Cortez Acosta by knockout. So I'm not hitting like these plays I'm laying chalk on. So for now on, I'm going to try to be more careful when I am laying the juice, but I still want to hit some of these big props as well. So if I can hit these plays I'm laying juice on, I mean, if Maxim wins, it's like a 4-unit night for me. So it is what it is. But Weezy, I know it was a tough night for you. A tough night for a lot of people. It was a tough card. You want to talk about last night?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had Thomas Peterson big in the first fight of the night. I had a 3.5 unit bet on his money line, and I had a 1.15 unit bet on the fight doesn't go to decision because I thought, if Peterson gets this guy down, he's going to finish him. And yeah, so that I started off the night down 4.65 units. So it was going to be a disaster no matter what. And I finished down 5.1 units. I did hit the bet on Charlie Radke plus 180 was a great bet for me. And I lost my sprinkles. Julia by first round sub. She almost got there, didn't quite get there. Natalia Silva to win in round 3 for a quarter unit. She put it on Vivi, but Vivi's super tough, and she's never been knocked out in the UFC. So that one didn't come to fruition. And what really hurt Brady was I went to bed on Saturday night, saw Blake Builder at plus 140, and he had been plus 115, 120 all week. And I was like, if I don't bet this now, he's going to be right back to plus 120 when I wake up. And then so I bet it at plus 140. I wake up, he's plus 155. By fight time, he's plus 180. So I I kind of went into the card knowing that something was wrong there. You know, I mean, that's just not ordinary line movement. People just didn't all of a sudden figure out, because it doesn't take more than 8 minutes to watch the tape on Jun-Yong Lee. The guy won 3 fights in like 12 seconds. So everybody knew who he was. It was just, I think that there might have been an injury or something that we didn't know about Bilder, because the amount of money that came in the last day on Lee, and then he looked
weird.
Phenomenal. Dude, Lee looked phenomenal in there. And I just want to say, Bilder's a guy that gets better as the fight goes on. He's a dog. He's durable. He never quit, even though Lee had him in several bad spots. And Lee is not a guy known for his cardio, but Lee won the second half of the fight just as dominantly as he won the first half of the fight. So I think he answered a lot of questions about the things that we didn't necessarily know about him. So I thought he had a phenomenal performance. I want to big up Jamal Pogues, even though he cost me a lot of money, because he stopped the takedowns. He was definitely going to be the faster, better boxer at range. But, you know, we had seen Jamal Pogues in a couple of different fights on the regional scene get absolutely mauled by top-notch wrestlers, and which Thomas Peterson is. But, man, I mean, like, dude, he's as big around as Nascimento and Parker Porter. I mean, Pogues' ass is gigantic, and trying to get a man down with an ass like that, it was extremely difficult. And Peterson was just was unable to do it. So I thought Pogues had a great performance. I thought Radke had a great performance. Moicano, a great performance on the mic from what I heard. You know, Molly McCann, great sub. So it was a fun night of fights. I just, you know, when you have a read as strong as Peterson and it goes tits up for you like it did for me, it's going to be a bad night. And I don't like laying juice, Brady. So when I lay 3.5 units of juice on a -170 and the guy goes out there and looks +150, it hurts. So got to clean some things up going forward here. Starts this week. We're turning shit around, and we're going to start making some money this week.
Yep, it all starts with Bogdan Guskov and Zach Palga.
Yeah, dude, it's gonna be a fun fight. At least we're giving Palga a guy that won't let him just kind of sit there and do nothing. So Guskov's gonna go out there and make him fight. So it's gonna be a fun one.
I've never seen a fun Zach Palga fight, but hopefully Guskov makes it a fun one. That's for sure.
There's a first time for everything. And by the way, I've never seen Temba Garimbo come out looking like a powerful Israel Adesanya. But we saw that I mean, dude, he looked incredible. I mean, big ups. Temba Garimbo, he looked phenomenal. I know it was just Pete Rodrigues, but come on, man. That was a hell of a performance.
Yeah, that was crazy. All right, let's shout out the chat that we got some fights to talk about. Mushroom, as always, first one in here. Even Uncle Weezy was in here. 526. Uncle Weezy was hanging out. We got Dean McGregor in the chat. Bob Spikerman, Dixon Cider, Elijah One. We got Steven Jordan. We got Daniel Ben, Subhuman. We got Daniel in the chat. Mark, what is up, everybody? Marcus Williams, Small World Lifters. And I think I covered pretty much Sage. I see you. Spectactus as well. What is up? If you guys could please do us a favor and smash that like button. All right. Let's get into it, Weezy. We have a ton to talk about. And the first fight that we are going to talk about is going to be Arichi Long going against Daniel Marcos. And I got to ask, is this a replacement fight? Because we have like 50 replacement fights. Is this one of them?
I don't think it's one of them, dude. We've got like 50 of them, but let me see. All right.
Nope. I don't think
okay. Nope. They made this fight. Somebody in the UFC brass said, we got to get Daniel Marcos versus Kwai Lang on a card here. I mean, this is what the fans want. And you're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
There we go. Yeah, like a third of this card is replacement coming in. But so this fight was actually made by the UFC. There we go. All right, Daniel Marcos, Arichi Long. We got Marcos, 30 years old, 5'7", 69-inch reach. Arichi Long, 30 years old, 5'7", 69-inch reach. Same age, same height, and same reach. Look at that. Daniel Marcos, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, undefeated. He made his debut against Simon Oliveira, won that fight by second-round knockout, and then beat Davey Grant by split decision. Close fight, could have went either way. As far as Arichi Long, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Lost to Cody Durden by decision. Knocked out Cameron Else. Won a decision against Jay Perrin. was knocked out by Ayman Zahabi, and then won a decision against Johnny Munoz Jr. Yeah, this is a pretty, I'll say it's an easy one for me. It's a striker versus striker matchup. I think these guys are going to I think this fight is going to take place on the feet. I just think Marcos is the much, much more skilled striker. This is a guy that I love his striking. He has great kicks. He mixed it up to the body as well. Arichi Long is kind of like one of these brawlers that just wants to come forward. He wants to eat punches with his face. He's extremely tough. This is a guy that has 35 fights, and he's only been knocked out once. And it was against Ayman Zahabi in like the first 30 seconds, which makes no sense. But he's a tough guy. He's a dog. He's going to be in your face for 15 minutes, and he's really hard to put out. But I feel like this should just be Marcos picking him apart at range. I feel like this could look a little bit like the Jeff Molina fight, where Jeff Molina was just able to beat this guy up for 15 minutes, land a ton of volume. I love the volume of Marcos, the striking of Marcos, the cardio Marcos. And I think he probably goes out there and wins the decision. So, yeah, it's Marcos for me. This price is getting smashed as we speak, though. I think Marcos is probably one of the more popular parlay pieces on the card. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this first fight of the night?
Yeah, I mean, like the whole world is on Daniel Marcos right now, and he hasn't fought in a little over 6 months here because his last fight against Victor Hugo was canceled, I think, on the day of or on maybe on weigh-in day. So here we are with Marcos, a really good Peruvian striker. And yeah, dude, I agree with your breakdown. It's like with Marcos, you got a guy that's really technical and smooth looking. And with Quileng, you got a guy who's just like, he's the Mongolian murderer. This guy is going to try to take your head off, but it's not going to be with jabs and footwork and distance management. So I kind of find Quileng's fights kind of hard to cap because I don't know really what he's good at. But I do know that he's a scrapper. I know he's going to pretty much be there for the entire 3 rounds. I know he got absolutely murdered by Zahabi. But other than that, we've seen a guy who's pretty damn durable and tough and, can walk through a lot of punches. But he's fighting Durden and Cameron Else and Jay Perrin and Johnny Munoz and, Molina. So it's not exactly, guys that are going to like take your head off. And Marcos is a guy who's got, really good striking. So I like the technical striking of Marcos. Way better output, way better accuracy, but 52% distance striking defense for Aori Quileng is very, very disturbing. That's bad, but he does throw a lot more volume, does Quileng. And it's Marcos who's a little bit lower volume, but a lot more of a sniper and a lot harder to find. And he uses his kicks a lot better than Quileng does, I think. And Quileng spends a lot more time in control time positions than Marcos does. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm picking Marcos. I think he's the better striker, and I think that's probably where this fight takes place. And he's shown 100% takedown defense too, Brady. So we can count on him, having what it takes in order to keep the fight on the feet where he's going to do the better work. And we saw that in the Brandon Lewis fight as well on Dana White's Contender Series. And we don't have the stats for that included here. So I think he keeps it standing. I think he does the better work, and he probably wins this one by decision.
Yep. Like I said, Arichi Long, 36 fights. He's only been knocked out once, so very good durability. He has been subbed 3 times, but Marcos has no subs. I don't see that happening. I see this fight taking place on the feet. My only concern with laying minus 230 on Marcos would be, I think this goes to decision more often than not. I think it does take place on the feet the entire time. And these crooked, corrupt judges, man. I mean, one of the judges last night in the main event scored the fight a draw. And
I have to interrupt you. It was my favorite judge, dude, Ron McCarthy. That guy is the absolute worst, Brady. He had the first round in the Gordon Pimblett fight for Pimblett. I mean, this guy is as corrupt or as stupid or both as it comes. This guy he's got a job because his dad is Big John. I mean, he is just that. Like in the dictionary next to the word nepotism, you'll see the crooked face of Ron McCarthy in there. Sorry to interrupt, dude. I have to go. I mean, like you bring up Ron McCarthy, and you know your Uncle Weezy's just going to interrupt you and go on a rant.
But that's my point. I mean, what if Ron McCarthy's judging? I know, I missed the first round of the Dolidze Imavov fight. I wasn't watching, but from what I heard, it was like a borderline 10-8 But I
Yeah.
did watch rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I didn't think Dolidze won any of those rounds. He had the point deduction. Imavov had the point deduction, but scoring that fight a draw is criminal.
Yeah, I mean, Dolidze didn't do anything but hold him up against the cage. I mean, he tried to get him down, tried to land some big shots, but Imavov was great. He had a great performance.
Yeah, so that'd be my only concern is the crooked, corrupt, blind judges. But yeah, Marcos by decision. This line has moved. Marcos opened up -160, currently -230. Richie Long opened up +140, currently +195. Like I said, popular parlay piece. And if I was to do a parlay, he'd be up there with parlay pieces I would be looking at personally. But other than that, I don't have a ton of interest. I was thinking maybe we'd get a good price on like the over, like the fight doesn't go, but the over 2.5 is -150. With how hittable Richie Long is, I don't know if I love that, but I do think it does go over.
Yeah, dude, Marcos has got a 53% finish rate as a pro, but he's really starting to show that power. He does have power.
He does.
And like, dude, he beat 7 shades of shit out of Brandon Lewis on Dana White's Contender Series. Now, I don't think a lot of guys would have survived that beating. So he's definitely getting better, is Marcos. And I see why a lot of people are on him bigly this week.
Yep, I get it. I get it. I get Marcos being -230. I don't get Urbina being -230, but Marcos, I can get behind. I can get behind that. All right. Moving on, this is a short notice replacement. So Haider Emil was supposed to fight Melsik Bogdasarian. And then for some reason on fightodds.io, they had Haider Emil versus Shalian for some reason. I don't know if that was ever a matchup, but it's on there.
It was.
It was.
Yeah.
So this is going to be his third attempt at finding a fight here. So we will start with Haider Emil. He's 33 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. Fernie Garcia, 31 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. We got Fernie Garcia, 2 years younger, 2-inch height advantage, and then a 3-inch reach disadvantage. By the way, Fernie is coming in here, of course, on short notice, and he's coming up a weight class as well. So we got Haider Emil, who is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He had his debut his Contender Series fight was against Emre Sanmez, won that fight by decision. Very good performance there, kinda. Both guys were kind of gassed out, ended up being a sloppy fight, but he was able to kind of dog through it and win the fight by decision. Fernie Garcia, he had a decision loss to Rinya Nakamura's last time out. Of course, I had like the sub prop for Rinya. I think I had like the under for Rinya. And Rinya almost subbed him 50 times, but Fernie showed some very, very good durability there. He lost a decision to Brady Heastan as well, and then he lost a decision to Journey Newson, and he did knock out Joshua Williams on the Contender Series. So yeah, 0-3 thus far for Fernie Garcia in the UFC. And yeah, I watched a lot of tape on this Haider Emil, and I was very impressed. This guy kind of reminds me of like who I thought Blake Builder was. Which is a dog, a guy that's just going to march forward the entire time. He doesn't care what you're throwing at him. He's going to get in your face. He's a dog. He's going to bark at you, and he's going to just go balls to the wall for the full 15 minutes. Like I said, everything I thought Blake Builder was, but obviously not. So yeah, I was really impressed with this guy. What I was kind of looking for was, maybe some wrestling here, because that is something that Fernie Garcia has really struggled with thus far in the UFC. Is the takedown defense at 40%. He can be taken down. He can be controlled. And with him being undersized, I would like to see Haider go for some takedowns. He doesn't wrestle a ton, but I have seen him get a takedown or two. But what I really do like is just the forward nonstop pressure, the power of Haider Emil as well. Very high on this guy. And I think it's a pretty good matchup for him, especially considering Fernie is taking this fight on short notice up a weight class. So yeah, I like this fight. I like Haider quite a bit. I think this guy is going to be somebody to look out for. Fernie Garcia, I mean, what can you say? He's 0-3. 0-3 in the UFC. They're giving him one more shot here, and it's not the easiest of matchups. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, dude, this is going to be a fun one because of Haider Emil. I looked at Haider's, I kind of wiki capped him at first before I watched the tape on him. I was like, oh, come on. 33-year-old featherweight making his debut. I mean, what are we doing here? And I was like, okay, let's watch the tape. Let's see what this kid's got, and damn, the tape's awesome. The tape's awesome. This guy's fights are incredible. The Hobson Jr. fight was awesome. The Devontae Sewell fight was awesome. The Chase Gibson fight was awesome. The Emra Somnez fight was really good, even though Emra just tried to sniff crotch the entire time. Emil kept getting up, kept getting out of those positions and landing big shots. He pressures relentlessly. If any Hadar Emil opponent has a cardio problem, he's gonna finish him. This guy is relentless. It is so fun to watch. So I'm really glad that Hadar got a chance to be in the UFC here. And he's a Gilbert Melendez student, Brady. And you can kind of tell when watching him. He kind of fights like Gilbert. Gilbert was just a guy who hated to let his opponent breathe. And that's exactly what Hadar does. And he does everything pretty well. You're not going to really see him go out there and offensively wrestle, but his defensive wrestling and his counter wrestling is really good. His get-up game is solid when he gets taken down. He did have a little bit of problems with Chase Gibson in the first round. Chase Gibson got him down, got his back to the mat, and wound up getting on his back when he tried to get up. So we did see Hadar lose some minutes on the ground to Chase Gibson in the first round of that fight. But like every time Hadar Emil gets back up, it reminds me of when Conor McGregor fought Chad Mendes. And you remember when Mendes had him down and he was just grinding on him. And then the second round, Conor got back up and he was just like, and then he just walked him down and just destroyed him. Every time Hadar Emil gets back up, he just starts walking his opponents down. He doesn't take a backward step. Now, there are some problems, right? He is a 33-year-old guy making his debut against somebody who has 3 UFC fights, 2 of them in, tough opponents in Heastan and Rinya Nakamura, in Fernie Garcia here. But Hadar Emil was originally supposed to fight Shaylan Nurdenbecka, who's a wrestler. Then after that, after Shaylan pulls out, they give him Melsik Bagdasarian, who's the opposite. Now you got a kickboxer here who isn't going to wrestle at all. And then now you don't have a kickboxer. You've got a Mexican boxer, who's not going to wrestle at all. But this guy's just like a pure boxer. So I think this is the easiest opponent of the 3, Fernie Garcia. He's the least dangerous opponent of the 3. But Fernie, what he really is, Brady, is a great counter striker. So Hadar Emil is absolutely going to give Fernie Garcia exactly the kind of fight that he wants. He's going to be in his face. He's going to be in that pocket throwing, and that's what Fernie wants. So I think this line's going to get blown out for Hadar, and I think that the longer this fight goes, Fernie Garcia, not a guy not known for his conditioning in the first place, taking a short notice fight against a guy who never takes a backward step and a guy who throws an absolute shit ton of volume in Hadar Emil. This is a bad matchup for Fernie, but he could absolutely land something big in the first 6 or 7 minutes of this fight. And we've seen Hadar, absorb some big shots because of the way that he fights, because he's constantly moving forward and being in that pocket.
Yeah, I mean, he eats punches with his face, but the dude's super, super tough. But he will eat punches, and he'll smile at you. I mean, this guy's a savage, man.
He's so fun to watch, dude. I mean, if you haven't had a chance to tape this guy yet, and you're the type of person that likes to watch tape when you're researching fights, you got to watch the tape on Hadar Emil, specifically those fights that he had against Gibson, Sewell, and Hobson Jr. Man, oh man, you're going to be a real fan of this kid. He is going to be great. I hope he's here for a while. I hope he fights frequently, because this guy's going to put on great fights every time.
Dude, I was watching the junior fight. I felt bad for Robson Jr. I was like, the ref could have stopped the fight like a million times and just beat the crap out of him. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this guy. Don't know if I'm a big fan of this price tag. He opened up as a minus 255 favorite. He's already minus 185. So money's already came in on Fernie, who opened up plus 215, currently plus 160. I'm gonna pick Emil. I'm just not sure I'm gonna be able to get to there with the bet. Because if I am betting against Fernie Garcia, I want somebody that I know for sure is going to wrestle. I think that's a massive hole in the game of Fernie. And I just kind of have a feeling, like you said, Emil's going to kind of give Fernie the fight he wants. Not saying he can't win that fight, but I'm just not sure if I want to lay minus 185. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over is juiced to minus 215. It opened at minus 155, so money's coming in on the over. And then the unders plus 175. I think a lot of that has to do with the toughness Fernie showed off thus far in his 3 losses. So probably going to sit back and just enjoy this one. Root for Emil. But yeah, we'll see if Fernie can go out there and pull it off. I mean, he needs a win. Like I'm shocked he's getting another shot here, but we'll see if he can pull it off. Maybe he can pull a Charles Johnson, right? Charles Johnson was on a 3-fight skid. Got to win. We'll see if Garcia could do that as well. Any thoughts on the line movement? There's been a ton of line movement on both the total and the side here.
Yeah, I kind of like the under here just because of the way Emil fights. And if you're, and I know that Fernie's never been finished, so that's a huge hurdle to get over. But sometimes you got to look a little bit deeper. You got to put your goggles on, Brady, see what's lurking underneath those stats. And what you're seeing when you're lurking underneath is that, Isaiah Baton Gonzalez, not really much of a finisher. Journey Newsom, not much of a finisher. Brady Heastan, not much of a finisher. Rinya Nakamura is a phenomenal prospect, but a wrestler. And he was getting pretty damn close to finishing him. Hader Emil is just going to come forward, and it's going to be a car crash. On short notice, plus 175 for the under 2.5. It has my attention, but because Garcia's never been finished, I don't need to run to the window. I might even get a better price later on in the week.
Yeah, you probably will get a better price. And Garcia's not like Garcia only has 1 knockout, and it was against that bum Joshua Williams with the blue hair.
Yeah. The turquoise hair. It's so bad.
I mean, if you're coming out with blue hair, you're getting knocked out or subbed. It's just
yeah, and we saw like Rong Zhu get a win yesterday. The guy that formerly came out with pink hair. We saw Yi Jia get a win when he didn't come out with the leopard print hair. And it just goes to show you, even Charles Johnson didn't dye that rat on the back of his neck last week. He didn't dye it. It was still there. It's still an ass haircut, but it was a less ass haircut than last time, right?
100%.
Yi Jia, less ass haircut. He gets a win. Rong Zhu, less ass haircut. He gets a win. Are we seeing a trend here, UFC fighters? Get a decent barber. You might see some more wins.
I couldn't agree anymore. All right, Weezy. Yeah, he was supposed to fight Melsick, but now
Melsick dropped out. Yeah, and this Fernie Garcia is the replacement. And UFC stats is always like the last to update, Brady. When you want up-to-date fight announcements, you always go to Tapology. Tapology almost always will have it on the official update fights on their website before they'll update on UFC stats.
Yep, which is terrible, but it is what it is. Speaking of terrible, we got Zach Palga going against Bogdan Guskov. We fix this up. So we got this fight reminds me a lot of the movie, Weezy, you've heard of it, the movie The Orange Man. The Orange Man. Just because if you're betting on this fight, I mean, Uncle Weezy's going to hit you with some oranges. Weezy sent that to me yesterday. I was laughing so hard. I can't believe there's a movie based off of you. How incredible is that? And look at the sack of orange, like a bloody sack of orange. Are you kidding me? Is that made up or is that a real movie?
Dude, shout out Eric Betts Fights. I had no idea that fight existed. And then he got in my DMs and he's like, Weezy, you got to check this out. This is a real film it's a horror film about a mass murderer who evidently murders people with a sack of oranges. I don't know, man. It sounds like, I don't know, dude. I feel like I need to get a lawyer. I feel like people are stealing my ideas, Brady, Dude,
yeah, I'm looking it up. It is a real movie back in 2015, and you can watch it on Tubi. You can watch it on Vudu. You can watch it on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. I'm going to have to buy this tonight. What, $3? I am watching this movie tonight.
You got to let me know how it is, dude.
I will. We got Dan in the building. What is up, Dan? Yeah, speaking of terrible, but this fight reminds me of that movie. Like, if you're betting on this fight, I mean, the Orange Man might show up. I can't believe that. That is amazing. But we got Zach Palga going against a Bogdan Guskov. We got Zach Palga, 35 years old, 6'2" with a 76-inch reach. Guskov, 31 years old, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. Guskov, he's 4 years younger. He's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and then a same reach there. So Zach Pauga is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Muhammad Usman, lost that fight by second round knockout. He took Jordan Wright to a decision, which, I mean, that's a jailable offense, right?
It's gotta be, dude. I mean, that fight was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I mean, that was terrible. I mean, that was probably the worst thing that happened to me that day. My mother was actually in the hospital that day. And I think that fight was probably worse than, going to visit my mom in the hospital. She's all right now, but that fight was that bad. It was that bad, Weezy. And then he lost to Modestas Bukauskas in another horrible fight. As far as Guskov, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, makes his debut against Volkan Oezdemir. And we called it. We kind of called him a fraud vibes from him. And he went out there and he was such a fraud that he didn't get knocked out by Volkan Oezdemir. He got subbed by Volkan Oezdemir, which I thought was hilarious. And I felt bad because I'm sure a lot of people bet Volkan round 1 KO, which makes sense. But he subbed him, which had to been something crazy. But I was able to hit on the under there. Yeah, I'm not high on Zach Pauga at all, man. I mean, this guy, his fights are just terrible. I don't think he's a bad fighter or nothing like that. It's just his fights are awful to watch. He does nothing in a lot of his fights. His striking's decent. When he lets his hands go, his striking's decent. This guy can wrestle. Defensive wrestling's pretty good. But he's a light heavyweight with a 17% finish rate. I mean, I can't think of another light heavyweight with a 17% finish rate. And then, like I said, taking Jordan Wright to decision is just that's terrible. And then you got Bogdan Guskov, who, yes, getting some fraud vibes here, but he goes out there and he looks to take your head off, and he doesn't actually look bad. It's just he hasn't fought the best competition. He's starching these guys in the first round. The majority of his wins do come in the first round. Doesn't look terrible. It's just, I don't know. I would never lay a minus number on Zach Pauga, but at the same time, I'm not running to the window to bet on Guskov. But as far as a pick goes, I'm kind of leaning the dog or pass here, just because I think Zach Pauga might potentially be chinny, and Guskov goes after it. He throws hard. So give me Guskov, but I don't know. This fight's the Orange Man might show up if I put any money on this one.
No, man, dude. And it's kind of funny because it's actually one of those interesting stylistic matchups where you've got a guy with 100% finish rate in Guskov against a minute winner in Pauga who's got a 17% finish rate. So, can Pauga survive the early storm from Bogdan? Because we've seen Bogdan looks terrible once the fight goes on. The guy's conditioning is not real good, but it hasn't had to be that good. He's 14-3 with shit conditioning because this dude hits hard. And he can get on top and land good ground and pound. It seems like he's fairly well-rounded. It seems like he's athletic and explosive, but just, I mean, who is he beaten? Carlos Eduardo, Ali Reza Vayafe, Abdul Saeed, Vadim Litvin. I don't know who the hell any of these people are. And they're impressive wins, but when you see him like early in his career get out of the first round, you just see him, he's huffing and puffing, and Zach Pauga trains at elevation, maybe a live entry on Pauga after round 1. That could be a good way to play this. If you're a degenerate, if you have to have a bet on every fight, maybe Guskov round 1 KO. I think that's probably his path because Pauga is known for being a pretty chinny dude. I don't like the way Pauga reacts when he gets hit. And this is a guy who played professional football, NFL football. He was a running back and a fullback. He's probably got some concussions in his history too, so those guys, sometimes they get a lot less durable as time goes on. So yeah, I could see a Guskov first round KO bet. I could see a Pauga round 2 or round 3, even though he's not much of a finisher because Guskov just doesn't have great conditioning. But like you, Brady, I think I'm going to sit back and not have any money on this fight and feel pretty good about myself for good bankroll management.
Yeah, somebody needs to take that picture and just put your face on it right there, where it says the Orange Man. Just replace his face with Uncle. But apparently that's the killer. He looks kind of terrifying. It looks like he's smashing an orange right there, or like he's juicing an orange off his own head in anger.
Wow, yeah. Dude, God damn, dude. It's just that is a face that only a mother could love right there. It looks like Muslim Salikov.
Oh God. So yeah, I'm gonna be watching that tonight. and then I'll get back to you about if it's any good. So we'll take a look at the odds. We have, I think this is the closest line fight on the card. So Zach Palga opened up -160, he's currently -130. Guskov opened up +140, he's currently +110. And we have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds. The under 1.5 is -110. The over 1.5 is -120. Basically, what they're saying is if you like the over, you like Zach Palga because he's finishing nobody ever. And then if you like Guskov, you like the under because he's not going to decision more often than not. So, I mean, pick your poison. I guess I lean Guskov. I'm maybe taking a look at Guskov round 1 KO. I think that's his win condition. And like you said, don't like how Palga's reacting to shots, but it's not something I'm extremely confident in. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of either of these guys.
Yeah, you and me both, dude. It's a fairly low level fight, but at least they gave Palga the type of opponent that's going to make him fight. You know, I really don't think that we're going to see this be like another Jordan Wright fight or even like a Bukowskis fight. It should be a fun one. You know, it's a good opponent for Palga to make him a little more interesting this time around.
Yep. We'll see. We'll see. And by the way, man, I didn't even talk about it. I think I mentioned it last week. Bogdan Guskov has to be the most terrifying human being I've ever seen. I mean, look how scary that. I mean, this guy should star in the freaking Orange Man. I mean, that's he is terrifying looking.
Wasn't he in the movie Hostel too? He was the torturer. I think
he might have been. I mean, that is rough.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you could see why the guy got into professional fighting. You know,
yeah.
You're not gonna be a door-to-door salesman with a face like that, unless, of course, you're just like doing that job so that you can find people to murder.
I mean, if he's showing up the door, I mean, he's going to jail if he shows up to anybody's door. I mean, they're calling the cops, and that guy shows up.
Yeah, dude. If that guy showed up at my door, I'd go running out the back door real fast.
Yeah, that's terrifying, but we'll see if that works out for him. All right, moving on. We have a very intriguing fight here. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one. We got Jeremiah Wells going against Max Griffin. We got Jeremiah Wells, 37 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. Max Griffin, 38 years old, 5'11" with a 76-inch reach. We got Wells 1 year younger. Max Griffin with a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage. Max Griffin is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Song Kanan. Decision win against Carlos Condit. Decision loss against Neil Magny, decision win against Tim Means, and then a decision loss against Michael Morales. As far as Jeremiah Wells, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Worley Alves, submission win against Blood Diamond, knockout win against Court McGee, decision win against Matthew Semmelsberger, and then a submission loss to Carlston Harris. So this is kind of a tough fight for me because Jeremiah Wells is a guy, it's hard to explain him. This is a guy where he's not very high volume. He'll do a lot of nothing, and then he'll all of a sudden just explode into big combinations. He has unreal power. He's a Renzo Gracie Fili guy, just so physically strong. This guy can wrestle. This guy can grapple. His cardio is not as bad as you'd think it'd be as well. Jeremiah Wells, I think, is a very good fighter, but on the flip side, you got Max Griffin, who's just a more experienced fighter. And although Max Griffin's 38 years old, he's only 1 year older than Jeremiah Wells. Max Griffin's the bigger guy as well. And I think Max Griffin's going to be the minute winner here on the feet. Max Griffin has very good striking, very good volume, and very good takedown defense. There's been one fight. There's been one fight in the UFC where Max Griffin was both taken down and controlled for a good portion of time, and that was his debut against Colby Covington, where Colby Covington actually finished him in that fight. But outside of that, Max Griffin's very hard to take down, very hard to hold down. I think he's a BJJ black belt as well. So I feel like these two are a lot more well-matched than this line does indicate. And on top of that, Jeremiah Wells, he has that power, but Max Griffin's only been knocked out once. It wasn't that Colby Covington fight by ground and pound. So it's a close fight. And like I said, the line doesn't really reflect that, Weezy. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think you broke it down perfectly. There's a lot of reasons to like Max Griffin here. Like you say, people are like, oh, he's old. Well, these are 2 old gentlemen that'll be setting foot in the cage here. But even though he's only 1 year older, he's got 13 more professional fights, 3 more years as a pro, almost 200 more minutes of pro cage time. He's got 10 more fights at the UFC level, over 150 more minutes of cage time in the UFC than Wells does. He's a very durable guy. And if you look at the striking numbers, Wells's power numbers are just off the charts. I mean, like if this guy lands on you, you're in big trouble. But I mean, Griffin's the better striker. I mean, look at the distance striking accuracy, right? 47% for Max Griffin, 30% for Jeremiah Wells. And that's what you would expect to see when you see the power differential, because of course, guys that wind up, and throw from the middle of last week, every overhand right, they're not going to be as accurate because they load up. You see it coming because they're very predictable and they're throwing with everything with 100% force. But like Griffin is a guy who is going to be durable, but he's extremely accurate. He's more defensively responsible. He's done a great job of mixing in wrestling to win minutes in his own right. And yeah, 69.5% takedown defense is above average for the division. He's got good, solid grappling efficiency. And the other thing is like Jeremiah Wells is spending all of his time in grappling positions here. I don't think he's very comfortable at distance striking range. So if he's not able to take down and hold down Griffin, I think as the fight goes on, we're going to see Griffin be the one doing the way better work at distance. And like I say, we know that we can trust this dude's durability. And because Wells is so not accurate, that it's going to be difficult for him to find that big shot. Griffin's fought the better level of competition as well, according to my metric. His wins are a little bit better. Not much better, but he's definitely lost to the better guys. I mean, this guy's lost to a couple of champions, for Christ's sake. So, and then the recent losses, only Michael Morales, the split decision loss to Neil Magny. I thought he won that fight. He's beating veterans like Tim Means, Carlos Condit, Song Kanan. Yeah, Max Griffin's a damn good fighter. So I think this is a very close fight. Of course, you got to worry about the power of Wells at all times. The guy's power is next level. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu game is very dangerous and opportunistic, and he has the ability to win minutes on the ground. It's just we're going to see, when he goes up against somebody with a little bit better takedown defense than Blood Diamond or Warley Alves or Matt Semmelsberger, whether that wrestling winds up translating against a guy like Griffin.
Yep, 100%. It's a very interesting fight. Jeremiah Wells opened up minus 175. He's currently minus 175. Max Griffin opened up plus 150. He's currently plus 150. And Jeremiah Wells, he's not really a guy I want to bet against, but my gosh, I mean, we mentioned just a ton of reasons to like Max Griffin, but at the same time, maybe Wells knocks him out. I mean, Wells did knock out Court McGee, who we thought would never get knocked out, but Max Griffin is tough. He is very tough. So yeah, the plus money on Griffin is something that is kind of intriguing. The over 1.5 is minus 215. The under 1.5 is plus 175. No interest there. Yeah, it's dog or pass for me on this one. Any interest in the total for you?
Maybe the over, just because Griffin is such a durable dude and he's not like finishing guys that are Jeremiah Wells' caliber. So, but I think money has come in on the over, so I don't think the price is as good as it was.
Yeah, the over opened up minus 205, went to minus 180, and it's currently minus 215.
Minus 215. Yeah, that's a lot to pay because, I mean, dude, Wells has got next level power. So, I mean, that would be a butt clencher picking an over in this fight. And you'd like a little bit better than minus 215.
Yep, 100%. All right, Weezy, get out your oranges.
Yeah.
We have Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. We have Devin Clark, 33 years old, 6 foot with a 75-inch reach. Marcin Prachnio, 35 years old, 6'3" with a 74-inch reach. Clark is 2 years younger. He's going to be at a 3-inch height disadvantage, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. Devin Clark is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Decision loss against Ian Kudalaba. Knockout win against William Knight. Knockout loss against Azamat Mirzakhanov. A decision win against Daun Bum. And then a submission loss against Kennedy Nzechukwu. As far as Marcin Prachnio, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A decision win against Khalil Roundtree. A knockout win against Ike Villanueva. Decision loss to Philippe Lins. Decision win against William Knight. And then a submission loss against Vitor Petrino. So I can't believe the UFC made this matchup. I mean, these are two guys that I typically look to go out there and fade. You know, I've never been high on Marcin Prachnio. He started his career in the UFC off with back-to-back knockout losses all in the first round. I don't think he has the best cardio. I don't think he has the best takedown defense and get-up game. I don't really think he has the best anything, to be honest. And then as far as Devin Clark, he's a guy that I think he's actually skilled. It's just he is undersized for the division. He's a guy that I really question the durability. He's been finished like 7 times in his career. So just 2 guys that actually look to fade. And now we have to lay minus 205 on one of these guys. And that guy is Devin Clark. He's a favorite. And he's the favorite because he has a clear path to victory here. Devin Clark is a wrestler. He's attempted 83 takedowns in the UFC. We see it. You know, Marcin Prachnio's takedown defense has not looked good in the UFC. 54% takedown defense. He can't be taken down. He can't be controlled. He gave Vitor Petrino his first submission win last time out. So, yeah, Devin Clark should be able to take this guy down, control him en route to probably just the worst fight of the year. I mean, this fight's going to suck, I think. So, yeah, Devin Clark, probably by decision, maybe a late finish, maybe, but I even kind of doubt that. I mean, Marcin Prachnio is kind of a tough guy to read. It's like he was knocked out 3 times in a row. And then there was that fight with Khalil Roundtree that still, till this day, makes no sense. Like, I'd like to see them run it back one of these days, Khalil Roundtree, Marcin Prachnio, because, like, how does that even make sense? How does Marcin Prachnio, for one, not get knocked out, and 2, beat Khalil Roundtree? I mean, that was ridiculous. And then there was that William Knight fight where William Knight landed 5 strikes in the entire fight. So there's been some weird outcomes in these Prachnio fights. I would not lay minus 2.5 on Devin Clark. Like, I don't trust the durability, but yeah, he should be favored and he should win. But just laying a minus number on either of these guys is just sickening. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying to lay minus 200 on a guy like Devin Clark when we know that Khalil Roundtree has went out there and lost to this guy. You know, that William Knight went out there and was hypnotized and did nothing. I mean, like, some guys just go out there against Prachnio and just look terrible. You know, even Lins didn't look that good. That was a close fight, you know, the Felipe Lins, Marcin Prachnio fight. And he was wrestling the shit out of Prachnio. You know, Prachnio's takedown defense is only 55% on paper, but at least this dude spends 74% of his UFC cage time at distance. And then if you look at those striking numbers, Brady, they're pretty damn good. 6.25 landed per minute at distance. He's only absorbing 3.34. And even if you throw out that William Knight fight, he's still got a good positive, you know, distance striking differential. It's a little bit skewed just because of that. I mean, like, one of the worst performances in the history of the sport was William Knight against Prachnio. But Clark's grappling efficiency is actually really bad, Brady. You know, like, a couple of quick calculations here. You see that he's attempted 83 takedowns and his opponents have only attempted 33. So if you take 83 divided by the total, which was 116, no, he's attempting 71.5% of the takedowns in his fights, but only getting 53% of the control time. He gets 28 plus 13. So 28 divided by 41, he gets 69% of the, or 68% of the takedowns, only gets 53% of the control time positions. So this guy's not holding people down. As far as his striking numbers, he lands below average amount of strikes in the clinch and on the ground compared to his opponent. And at distance, I think that Clark's probably got the power differential here, but it's going to be Prachnio winning the minutes at distance here. And I think he could even land the bigger shots as well. The thing is if Devin Clark doesn't get Prachnio down and hold him down and do damage while he's there, we might see Prachnio landing the bigger shots on the feet and him winning a decision, you know, if this thing goes the full 15. And that's another terrifying thing. Like, if you're laying minus 200 on Devin Clark, this guy's, you know, 7 of his 8 UFC wins are decisions, Brady. Who did he finish?
William Knight.
Yeah. You know, so, like, the only guy that he's finished is a guy who's literally had the worst performance of all time in the sport. You know, so what did you say earlier about, like, letting fights go to the judges and then letting guys like Ron McCarthy decide your fate? Yeah, man, laying minus 200 on a decisionator that doesn't do a lot of damage when fights are on the ground and is not a submission threat, it seems dangerous. There might be some value here on Prochnio, but I'm not running to the window for it because at the end of the day, if I lose money betting on Marcin Prochnio, that's going to be a self-esteem problem for me.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's wrong with passing. This is I just don't see myself betting anything. I'm picking Devin Clark, but minus 205. This is interesting by Dirty though. If you can confirm this, which it sounds right to me, Clark is 9-1 in fights that go to decision. That's incredible. Is that true?
Yeah, it's right there in the bottom left corner of the screen. Overall in decisions, this dude is 9-1 and he's 7-1 in the UFC. So the guy absolutely does a phenomenal job of winning minutes by landing big shots every once in a while on the feet and by eating up a lot of minutes. See, he's only spending 38% of his time at distance, while Prochnio spends 74% of his time at distance. So Clark does do a good job of winning minutes in those grappling exchanges. It's just that these days, Brady, you got to do some damage while you're there too. Otherwise, the judges just might ignore it.
They might, or they're probably not going to watch this fight. Like if I was a judge, I probably wouldn't even watch this one. I mean, I'd maybe go get a drink or something.
You'd be on your phone watching The Orange Man until they ask you to hand in your scorecard.
Hit up Keith Peterson, maybe smoke a cigarette or something. My gosh. Okay. So I was going to go back to this. Clark should be 9-0 in decisions. I mean, that Kudalaba fight should have been stopped on 100 different occasions. When Kudalaba took his teeth out, that fight should have been stopped. So, yeah. I saw Clark at minus 170 and laughed, and now he's minus 205. I mean, I can't do it. Clark's the guy that you typically want to bet as a dog, if at all, right? If at all. Yeah, I'm not touching it. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. So the over is minus 170. The under is plus 140. It's kind of weird seeing an under 2.5 in the light heavyweight division at plus 140. But at the same time, are these guys good enough to get a finish? I'm not even sure about that. So it probably does go to decision.
I'd probably lean over. Let me look at my prop template here real quick, Brady. But I would probably lean over because I don't really see Prochnio getting a finish at this level. I mean, 56% of their fights have went over, but think of it this way. 4 of 8 for Prochnio, 9 of 15 for Devin Clark, but none of those fights have went under 2.5 because of a Clark or Prochnio win. And wouldn't somebody have to win this fight inside? You know what I'm saying? In order for it to go under 2.5, somebody's going to have to win or it's going to be a DQ. So yeah, I kind of like the over at minus 170, but you're overpaying 21% compared to the benchmark. So yeah, the bookies are kind of onto it.
Yeah, and I think you threw in a hidden gem there. You said it, Weezy. Someone has to win this fight, right?
Right.
Someone has to win it.
Yeah. Somebody, if it's gonna finish, somebody has to win it, and neither of these guys really has any finishes of anybody not named William Knight at this level. So probably over.
Yep. Someone will win this fight, but I will not be betting on this one. Nothing, no money lines, no props, nothing's really sticking out. And we can move on to the next fight. We have Loma, Lookboonmee going against Bruna Brazil. We got Lookboonmee, 28 years old, 5'1" with a 61-inch reach. Brazil, she is 30 years old, 5'6" with a 65-inch reach. Lookboonmee, 2 years younger. It's going to be Brazil with a 5-inch height advantage and a 4-inch reach advantage. We got Loma. She is 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Decision win against Jin Yu Fry. Decision win against Sam Hughes. A decision loss to Lupi Godinez. Decision win against Denise Gomes. And then a submission win against Elise Reed. As far as Bruna Brazil, she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Had a knockout win on the Contender Series against Mar McMahon. Got knocked out by Denise Gomes in the 2nd round. And then beat Shauna Bannon in her next fight by decision in a fight that was pretty competitive. Yeah, we have Loma here, who I'm a big fan of Loma. I love the striking of Loma. She's a fighter that can even mix in takedowns as well. I'm really impressed with the improvements in the wrestling and the grappling of Loma. She went out there and got her first submission win against Elise Reed. That was incredible. Big fan of Loma. She's a pretty big favorite here. Not too high on Bruna Brazil, but I think Brazil is a lot better than she's shown thus far in the UFC. But yeah, Weezy, interesting fight. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, Loma looks good lately, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And she's been fighting well too. I mean, it's not just because she's handsome
Oh
that she's
gosh.
looking good, I mean, like it's she's been fighting pretty well. It's surprising, Brady, because she came into the UFC with the reputation of being a pure Muay Thai striker. You could wrestle this girl, you could win minutes there. But when you look at her grappling stats, they're pretty damn good. 50% takedown accuracy, 74% takedown defense. But she is losing the majority of her control time position. So the grappling efficiency rating would be below average, but the takedown accuracy is above average and the takedown defense is above average. And she is landing one more significant strike at distance than she absorbs. But Bruna Brazil is going to be 5 inches taller, going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here, a little bit of a pro experience advantage just in terms of fights. And I think she can maybe use her length to win some minutes here at distance. The question is she going to be able to stop some takedowns? Because she's been taken down 3 times on 5 attempts. That's not good. And we need to see that number go down for in terms of how many times she's getting taken down per fight, because she can't afford to lose minutes. You can't afford to lose minutes in the strawweight division, period, because you're just not going to see a lot of fighters getting finishes. These things are going to go to the decision 70% of the time. So, having good takedown defense, staying busy on the feet, having good striking defense and not absorbing big shots, all those things are really important. So I see why Loma's the favorite here, because I think maybe we can count on her to maybe get the takedowns instead of Bruna. I think maybe we can count on her to be the pressuring fighter, optically doing the better work. But I'm not laying minus 260 on Loma Lookboonmee right now. That is not something that's going to be happening this week. I think Bruna Brazil is also a very good Muay Thai striker. So this could be a very close fight if they both get the fight that they want. And plus money females, Brady, that's always a good long-term investment. We see those coming through quite a bit.
Yep. We do. I'm not sure what was up with Brazil in that Gomes fight, but she was just so gun shy. Even in like the Bannon fight, she didn't look that great as well. So I'm not sure what's going on with Brazil, but like I said, I think she's a lot better than she's shown in these first 2 fights for what it's worth, and that's probably why she's such a big dog here. But yeah, Loma can dictate where it takes place. She can absolutely get takedowns. But you're right, I'm not laying minus 250 on Loma. I laid minus 250 on Loma versus Elise Reed, and Elise Reed won the first round. She reversed Loma and got like 2 minutes of top control. And I was like, what's going on? Like, but luckily she did sub her. I cashed the bet, but I was like, man, I need to probably not do that anymore. So minus 250, I'm okay. I think there's much better parlay pieces. There's a lot of parlay pieces on this card, I think. I don't think Loma's one of them. Minus 250, no thank you. The over 2.5 actually looks somewhat playable at minus 215.
I agree. It's just the problem is that Bruna's been knocked out in all of her losses.
Yeah.
So that, because I looked at that, I was like, because, Loma's not finishing anybody at this level, really. I mean, like, she got the finish against Elise Reed, but hasn't Elise been finished in all of her UFC losses?
Yeah,
at least I think she might have. But either way, yeah, I don't know if Loma's finishing Bruna, but it's happened enough times that it's like, oh, do I want to lay minus 215 when the favorite is fighting a fighter with 100% finish rate in her losses? So this could be another one where I'm just to easily have no money on it and could care less.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple fights on that card for me like that. Yeah, big fan of Loma. I'll sit back and watch this one, and she should roll here, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Weezy. Next, we'll move on to a very fun fight. We have Bolaji Oki going against Damir Hadžović. We had Hadžović, 37 years old, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach. Oki, he is 28 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. We got Oki 9 years younger, 1-inch height advantage, and a 3-inch reach advantage. Damir Hadžović, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Polo Reyes, a decision loss to Christos Giagos, Renato Moicano, decision win against Yancy Medeiros, and then a decision loss to Mark Diakese. Bolaji Oki, he has he has 8-1 in his entire career. He is undefeated in his last 5 fights, though. He was on the Contender Series and absolutely destroyed Dylan Salvador in the first round. Looked incredible on the Contender Series there. So when I first saw Hadžović was on the card, I'm like, what the heck? This guy's still fighting. The last time he did fight, I think it was back in 2022 against Mark Diakese. And Hadžović, the thing that always sticks out with him is this guy has the worst takedown defense in the division. And I thought to myself, like, who could have worse takedown defense than Damir Hadžović in the lightweight division? And a guy that came to mind was Slava Borshev. I mean, Slava's takedown defense is trash. And then I looked at Slava's takedown defense. It's actually better than Hadžović's at 36%. So, I mean, if your takedown defense is worse than Slava Borshev, something's seriously wrong. And that's why he's losing a lot of these fights. Diakese took him down like 20 times. We saw Moicano take him down and sub him in the first minute. We saw Giagos take him down multiple times. So that's a massive hole in the game of Damir Hadžović. Now he's 37 years old, coming off of a little bit of a layoff, and he's going against a guy in Oki who I think is very fun to watch. This is a guy that's going to come forward. He's going to throw hard shots, and yes, he can mix in takedowns, which I think is key. So, yeah, I just think Oki has a lot of ways to win this fight. He is, I believe, one of the biggest favorites of the card. Yeah, this guy Oki is currently the biggest favorite on the card, which makes sense. I think a lot of people want to fade Damir Hadžović, and I don't blame him. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Bolaji Oki's going to kick the shit out of this dude. But it's another debuting fighter, Brady. It's hard. He's debuting fighters coming off the Contender Series, fighting guys that have 9 UFC fights in almost 100 minutes of octagon time. It's something that you got to tread lightly. We're going to talk about Carlos Prates taking on Trevin Giles here in the next fight. Another guy making his debut that looks phenomenal against regional scene competition, but now you're coming into the UFC. But I think the difference between this fight and the next fight that we're going to talk about is the level of opponent that these debuting fighters are getting. And with Damir Hadžović, you're getting a guy who's been around and he's got 4 UFC wins. But then if you ask yourself, okay, well, what's Damir? If I ask you this, Brady, what's Damir really good at?
Just being a Bosnian bomber.
Yeah, I mean, the takedown defense isn't great. He's gotten some takedowns and some control time. He has a couple wins by knockout in the UFC. He lands more significant strikes at distance than he absorbs. He's got good striking defense, good calf kicks. Like nothing spectacular. I mean, Damir Hadžović isn't going to blow anybody's doors off at this level. That doesn't deserve to be here. I mean, you go and you watch that Yancy Medeiros fight. I mean, Yancy Medeiros is a heavy bag. That guy is the most hittable guy in the UFC. And I mean, like Damir beat the brakes off of him for like 12 and a half, 13 straight minutes. But you know how durable Medeiros is. That fight probably should have been stopped like 14 times. But like Medeiros is awful. Medeiros is like 30% striking defense. He's one of the most hittable guys in the entire world. The thing about Oki is he's going to be taller than this guy. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. He's going to be twice as fast and 3 times as athletic. Way more powerful. I mean, Oki's got sick power, and he's got that speed power combination, which is very deadly at this level. But Bolaji can really wrestle. That's the difference here, is that the second that he feels like, oh, shit, Damir's pretty tough on the feet, he can just take him down whenever he wants. And we see on the tape for Oki on the regional scene that this guy, he will mix in the takedowns. He gets them, and he's pretty good on top. So the conditioning is there. The power is there. The speed and the athletic ability are there. And he's got a mean streak, too. And Damir Hadžović hasn't fought in over a year and a half. He's 37 years old. And he's not particularly good anywhere. This feels like they're trying to get the young kid from Belgium a win here. And I think he's going to do that and do it in spectacular fashion. I don't know what Damir has left in the tank at this point. And I mean, the recent wins over Medeiros and Polo Reyes just don't mean anything to me at this point.
Yep. Like I said, I was shocked that he's even on the roster at this point. Surprised to see him. But here we are, and we're seeing him. I think they're trying to build up Oki here, and rightfully so. Yeah, so like I said, Oki is the biggest favorite on the card. He is currently sitting around minus 300 at this point. And then we have Hadžović as a pretty big dog. So the over-under is set at 1.5 rounds, right?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, and it's juiced to the under, I believe.
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, Hadžović is super tough. I mean, the guy has a chin on him. He gets subbed a lot, but he has a chin.
Yeah, and Oki's not really a submission threat. He's definitely a power guy. Over 1.5 minus 180. Under 1.5 is plus 150.
For the Hadžović fight?
That's what I'm looking at right now. Yeah.
So there was some. I thought it was juiced to the under. So there's some line movement then.
Yeah, it looks like there was. Yes,
Okay.
because of
Okay.
Hadžović's durability.
He's not great, but he is really durable for what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that Hadžović is in a lot of trouble here, though, man. This kid Bolaji he's a stud.
Yep, he's pretty good. Only concern I have is, man, these newcomers are just dropping the ball left and right lately. But I mean, he should go out there and beat this guy.
Yeah, you always have to be very careful laying juice on these debuting fighters. I mean, I want to create a list one day of stud fighters that lost their UFC debuts, and I mean, it would blow you away how many of these guys came in on a loss. That guys that you're like, whoa, these are champions. You know, these are studs. These are top 5 guys. It happens to a lot of them.
Yep, for sure. So that should be an interesting fight. The newcomer in Oki. We have another newcomer, another Contender Series guy. We got Carlos Prates going against Officer Trevin Giles. We got Prates, 30 years old, 6'1" with a 78-inch reach. Officer Trevin Giles, 31 years old, 6 foot with a 74-inch reach. Prates is 1 year younger, 1-inch height advantage, and a 4-inch reach advantage. Officer Trevin Giles, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, knocked out by Rodrigues, knocked out by Michael Morales, decision win against Luis Cosi, decision win against Preston Parsons, and then a submission loss to Gabriel Bonfim. As far as Carlos Prates, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He had a knockout on the Contender Series against Mitch Ramirez. I believe that was in the first round. And so this should be an interesting fight. I see what the UFC is doing here. They're giving the Prates the Giles test, right? There's the Officer Trevin Giles test. They give these prospects to Trevin Giles. It seems they gave Rodrigues to Trevin Giles. Rodrigues passed the test. They gave Mike Morales Trevin Giles. He passed the test. And then they gave Gabriel Bonfim Officer Trevin Giles. He passed the Officer Giles test. So they're giving the newcomer Prates, guy that I'm very excited about, the Officer Giles test. Weezy, do you think he passes the test here?
It's a tough test to pass, man. I mean, Trevin Giles is damn good, dude. He can grapple with just about anybody. He's got a beautiful jab, 21 professional fights, 190 minutes as a pro. He's fought at 205, 185, and 170. This guy's regional scene competition was top-notch. His UFC competition, add up the records of everybody he's fought, 52 wins, 31 losses. You know, so Giles is a plus grappler. He is a plus striker. He has plus power. He's finished 3 of his 7 UFC wins. But the problem is he's been finished in all 5 of his UFC losses. What does Carlos Prates do? He finishes fights, man. I mean, 15 of 17 wins are inside the distance for Carlos. And, man, the striking on this dude, first of all, he's huge. 6'1" is what he's listed at. He might be taller than that, but he's got a 78-inch reach for a welterweight. That is scary. That you just don't see that every day. And this guy is such a smooth striker, a Muay Thai world champion, Brady, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, training out of Vale Top Team and Fighting Nerds. This guy stays super long when he strikes. His straight left down the pipe absolutely kills people. He throws head kicks and step-in knees that can punt your head into the cheap seats. He fought Charles Oliveira, knocked him out with a jab. Not that Charles Oliveira, just one of the other Charles Oliveras, but knocked Charles Oliveira out with a jab and literally had him out on the canvas for about 10 to 15 seconds from a jab. This guy Prates, if you watch his last 5 fights, or last 6 fights, which is what I watched in preparation. Dude, this guy's striking is phenomenal. I can't wait to see him in there. He looks like the real deal. He looks like he's ready now. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of Christian Leroy Duncan, only he throws techniques that work instead of that crazy, like, spinning hook kick shit that never lands. Like, everything that Prates throws is with the panache that Christian Leroy Duncan throws it, and he has that same size advantage over his opponents, only all these techniques that he throws so beautifully, they're all extremely functional techniques. Straight left hands, step in knees, head kicks from way out, blasts opposite stance body kicks, because he's mostly in the southpaw stance is Prates. So, I mean, I think Giles is in trouble here. But again, at the end of the day, you just cannot take lightly the fact that somebody's coming in and in their UFC debut, they're getting Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles is a tough fight for anybody in this division. He's a very good, very well-rounded, experienced, and well-tested fighter. So I think what they're doing is they're fast-tracking Carlos Prates. Look at these prospects that they're feeding Giles to. Duplessis, Morales, Bonfim. These are blue chip prospects that they're feeding to Giles. And the fact that this guy, Prates, is getting Giles as his first UFC fight should tell you all you need to know about how talented Carlos Prates is.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, Trevin Giles is good, man. You know, I had much higher expectations for Officer Trevin Giles. Like, I don't know. I think he kind of, I don't know, he just seems to like look really bad in some fights, but there's some fights where he does look really good, especially early in his career and even outside the UFC. He has some great wins. It's just some of these performances are just like mind-boggling. But he does have some good wins, like I said, inside the UFC and outside the UFC. Beat Roman Dolidze, for what it's worth, in just a terrible fight. And I don't know. We see that Prates is minus 200. Officer Trevin Giles is plus 170. The over-under is just a straight pick 'em here, minus 115 each way. And typically, we saw Trevin Giles get finished in the third round. He got finished in the third by Mearshart, Cummings, and he got finished in the second by Rodrigues, but his last two knockout losses his last two finish losses happened in the first. So Giles has been finished 5 times in the UFC. Durability is an issue, and that's not good against a guy like Prates, who's going to head kick you 50 times.
Yeah, and I mean, even Prates has been finished in 5 of his 6 losses. So it's unfortunate. I mean, and obviously it's an under 1.5 and not 2.5, but a 2.5 would be something we're probably looking at later on in the week, Brady, because when you got 11 combined losses and 10 of them are finishes, and then you got a guy in Giles who's finished 69% of his pro wins, and for Prates it's 89%. Yeah, I think violence is the answer here, but you'll love violence even more when you see what this guy Prates looks like when he's striking, man. I mean, it was a pleasure to watch this guy's tape.
Yeah, I remember him from the Contender Series, and I was on my video, Contender Series video. I said he reminds me of like when I'm playing Xbox and playing the UFC game, and I'm just spamming the head kick in the heavyweight division, just spamming head kicks with like Francis and Ngannou, just killing people. Reminds me of a lot like that. So yeah, so he's minus 200. No interest in that, but I do have some interest in violence for sure. But I have a feeling the fight doesn't go to decision. It's going to open up. What do you think? Minus 325?
Yeah, that's a number that they like to bet online, likes to open some of these, welterweight fights that are probably going to finish. I think that's about where they opened the Moicano Dober fight. I know that's where they opened Semmelsberger Parsons a couple of weeks back. And I think that this is a really good candidate to open up around minus 325 with the way that these guys finish fights.
We're typically right when we predict the lines. We'll see if we nail this one. We nailed one we nailed the Natalia Silva decision where it opened up last week as well.
Yeah, which was not at a great price, unfortunately.
That it was not. Weezy, we haven't even started the main card yet. This card is so long. But let's start this main card. We have a fight that we've already talked about. Rodolfo Vieira, Armen Petrosyan. We got Vieira, 34 years old, 6 foot with a 73-inch reach. Petrosyan, 33 years old, 6'3" with a 71-inch reach. Petrosyan, 1 year younger, 3-inch height advantage, 2-inch reach disadvantage. Vieira, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Submission win against Saperbeg Safarov. Submission loss to Anthony Hernandez. Decision win against Dustin Stoltzfus. Decision loss against Chris Curtis. And then a submission win against Cody Brundage. As far as Petrosyan, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Gregory Rodrigues. Won that fight by decision. He lost a decision against Kyle Bahayo. And then won a decision against AJ Dobson, and Christian Leroy Duncan had a knockout win on the Contender Series as well. So, yeah, this fight got canceled, I think, like during the card. Like, I really wanted to watch this fight. It's a fascinating fight. It's a striker versus grappler matchup. And it's a matchup where you can make a case for both sides. I think this fight should be a straight pick 'em. Weird line movement in this one. We'll talk about it, but yeah, I think it should be a pick 'em here because Rodolfo Vieira has a clear path to victory. Armen Petrosyan's takedown defense is terrible. 35% takedown defense. This guy Petrosyan has 11 fights. I bet if you go watch every single one of his fights, I bet at least 9 of them, you'll see him getting taken down like at least 3 times. It's crazy, especially on the regional scene. On the regional scene, guys are taking him down at will. Just terrible, terrible takedown defense. But what he's good at doing is kind of surviving until the second round. And once that second round starts, a lot of these guys don't have the cardio to keep wrestling, and then he knocks them out. That's how a lot of Petrosyan fights go. And that's how this one can go. But, one thing that I don't know. I picked Vieira the first time with not a ton of confidence, but what I do know is Vieira's grappling is elite, just a incredible phenom on the mat. He's going to get takedowns here. I mean, a gust of wind can take down Petrosyan, and if you get Rodolfo Vieira on top of you, there is going to be trouble. So I think Vieira sub-1 makes a lot of sense. I think a live bet on Petrosyan makes a lot of sense. And although all 4 of Petrosyan's fights have went the distance, I think a late finish for Petrosyan makes a lot of sense as well. So I like violence here. I doubt we're getting a good price, even though, like I said, Petrosyan has been the distance in all of his fights. But I like, it's set at 1.5, of course. So I think I like violence nonetheless. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about as 50-50 as it gets, really. I mean, obviously, if this fight stays standing, Rodolfo's fucked. And if this fight gets to the ground, Armen's fucked. It's pretty much that simple. And you don't ever really like, as a capper, to make things that black and white, but that's what this is. And for me, I think a couple of the times that we've gotten stung betting violence in Vieira fights, it was when Vieira could wait. Like the Stoltzfus fight, you figure that thing is going under 1.5 rounds, but because Stoltzfus presents no difficulty on the feet, Rodolfo was able to take his time there. And he didn't have to worry about, like, hey, if I don't get the takedown in the first round, I'll gas out and I'll die. That's why he waited to wrestle until the second half of the fight, and then he had a bunch of success. He can't wait here. If he stands at distance with Armen Petrosyan, he's probably going to shit himself from all the body kicks that he takes. So this fight is going to have to go right off. Rodolfo is going to have to get early takedowns because he can't stay at distance with Armen. Armen stays way too busy and works the body way too effectively, and the legs and everything else. I mean, so and on the other side, Petrosyan needs to do that damage early. He needs to make sure that Rodolfo doesn't get in on his hips and get him down, because if he gets taken down early while they're both dry, he's gonna have a very hard time getting up without giving up his back. And if he gives up his back to Rodolfo, it's going to be over. And Rodolfo can get your back and finish with the rear naked choke, but he can also finish from top control with that phenomenal arm triangle setup that he has. He's always looking to set up that arm triangle, and it's a beautiful submission, very functional, that works really well for him because of the build of his body. So I see violence here. I like the under 1.5. I think Petrosyan can knock out Vieira in 7.5 minutes because of the kicks. Vieira's a very durable dude. He can take a lot of shots, but it's the body kicks, I think, that can just shut you off no matter how durable you are. And after all the damage that he sustained to the body in the Chris Curtis fight, I think 1 or 2 of those opposite stance kicks from Petrosyan and they could be over. So I like the under 1.5 here. I'm kind of agnostic on the side, though.
This line movement's shocking. And here's why. So when this fight was kicking off a couple months ago, it closed at a pick 'em, man. I'm looking at the odds right now. Every book has it a pick 'em, -110 each way, -108 each way, -115 each way. Now all of a sudden, Vieira is -140. Like, what's going on?
I don't
happened?
know.
What happened in the last 2 months?
I'm not sure, man. That's wild. And that's usually, you're going to see it open up where it closed last time, because the books already have that information and then they're comfortable with it there. The books, if you give them a chance, they're always going to open that line at some place stagnant where it's not going to move, so that they can sell on the offer and buy on the bid. That's how you make money without taking any risk, is when the line doesn't move. So it's interesting that it's moved. But Dixon brought up a really good point. Armen Petrosyan, was poisoned in Brazil.
He was.
He was fucking poisoned, and he even
Yeah.
flat out said, I think it was Kopylov. There was another Russian fighter who had to pull out on fight day when he fought in Brazil. Was it somebody who fought Johnny Walker? Was there? There was another Russian fighter who was poisoned in Brazil before the fight and had to pull out on fight day. And Armen I think it was Kopylov. I think it was Roman Kopylov that was fighting somebody in Brazil and had to pull out on fight day. And you know, that's a narrative right there. When you're like coming out on Twitter, like accusing Brazilian people of poisoning you backstage and then claiming the exact same thing happened to Kopylov. So that's kind of a fun little narrative there. And you'd think that maybe now that the fight's not in Brazil, that maybe the line people are like, hey, Petrosyan's not going to get poisoned this time.
Gosh.
That should be worth at least 5% of implied probability, right? You know, so I mean, we'll see, man. This is great matchmaking. I love fights like this, but you know, when it's striker versus grappler like this, I mean, I gotta believe that we're gonna get an under 1.5 or a fight doesn't go to decision as a parlay piece.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the totals from when these two were supposed to fight a couple months ago, and they have the under 1.5 at plus 118 for a couple months ago, and it's currently sitting at plus 140. So it's even better this time around, under.
Yeah, Vieira is so durable, though. So durable. This is a hell of a fight. This is a high-level fight, man. Just like Max Griffin versus Wells earlier in the card. Very high-level fight.
Very fun fight. 50-50 in my opinion. Don't get the line movement. That's weird. That's really weird to me, but we'll see what happens there. All right. And hopefully nobody gets poisoned. I mean, that's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's awful. Yeah. That's awful. All right. Next, we have Michael Johnson going against Darrius Flowers. We got Michael Johnson, 37 years old, 5'10" with a 73-inch reach. Darrius Flowers, he's 5'9", 29 years old with a 71-inch reach. Flowers is 8 years younger, 1-inch height disadvantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Michael Johnson is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. A decision loss to Clay Guida, a knockout win against Alam Patrick, a decision loss to Jamie Malarkey, knockout or a decision win against Mark Diakese, and then a knockout loss against Carlos Diego Ferreira. As far as Darrius Flowers, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Got that knockout win / injury in his Contender Series fight, and then he got submitted in the second round by Jake Matthews. A very interesting fight here. I mean, Darrius Flowers is a guy that he's fun. I mean, I don't think he's, the best fight in the world, but what he's going to go out there and do is he's going to try to take your head off in the first 5 minutes. And if he does, he does. And if he doesn't, I mean, the guy just gasses out so much. This guy, Darrius Flowers, I have a huge concern about the durability. He's been finished a ton in his career. He's been submitted like 4 times, been knocked out before as well. And Darrius Flowers made me a lot of money. I had Jake Matthews sub, Jake Matthews round 2, and then Jake Matthews submission round 2. It was the trifecta. That was incredible. I forget which card it was, but just hit all 3 of those. So shout out to Darrius Flowers for that. But yeah, when I first saw this fight, I saw Michael Johnson as a favorite, and I laughed because Michael Johnson really shouldn't be a favorite against anybody, but it kind of makes sense here. Michael Johnson's the much better fighter. The problem is it's Michael Johnson, and this guy just continuously drops the ball. He makes mistakes. He loses fights. He should win. And a lot of times when you bet Michael Johnson, you're like yelling at the TV. Like there was one of these fights recently where you're just yelling at the TV at this guy, like 19 losses. So I think Michael Johnson, even at 37, just the much more skilled, experienced fighter, has fought the much better competition. But at the end of the day, it is Michael Johnson, and there is a good chance he does somehow find a way to mess this up, Weezy. So I don't know how to attack this fight yet. It's a Darrius Flowers fight, which means violence more often than not, but it's also a Michael Johnson fight. So kind of a confusing fight here for me, Weezy. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think the one thing that you and I can both agree on, Brady, is that Michael Johnson is the best 21-19 fighter in the UFC, bar none, period, end of discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, name me one 21-19 fighter in the UFC that's better than Michael Johnson. I'll wait, but I mean, it would be a long wait. So we'll keep talking about this fight. Beast Mode Flowers is just awesome. He's so fun to watch. I mean, he's the kind of guy, when he gets takedowns, you could easily see him throwing his opponent outside of the cage. Like he's that explosive. Like when he picks dudes up, they go for a ride. And it's not just a takedown when Darrius takes you down. I mean, like you could get put through the canvas, you could go through the fence, you could go over the fence, you could get dropped on your head, you could dislocate a shoulder like Gogo Latse did. There's a lot of bad things that can happen to you when somebody is powerful and explosive as Darrius Flowers either hits you in the head or takes you down. But outside of that, Flowers is literally awful in everything. Outside of being an explosive wrestler and striker, and look, I mean, that could be good enough. That's going to be good enough to win him some fights. Just out wrestling dudes and just, throwing them around like a rag doll, and maybe not doing much at distance striking range, but exploding forward every 45 seconds or so with a 7-punch combination that if any of those punches land, you're going to be in big trouble. But like, first of all, like when we see how Johnson is lost, outside of the Ferreira fight where he just got absolutely slept, this guy is a pretty durable dude. He's been in there with the best of the best. I mean, yeah, he got knocked out by Justin Gaethje. There's going to be some people that you're going to lose and get finished by, but in terms of the level of competition that these guys have fought, it's not even close. And for people who are saying like Darrius Flowers is going to out wrestle Clay Guida, like out wrestle Michael Johnson like Clay Guida did. Look, Clay Guida's a 9 out of 10 in conditioning. Darrius Flowers is like a 2 out of 10 in conditioning. I kind of compared Darrius Flowers to Bob Sapp. He kind of is like Bob Sapp in that like he could take your head off early. He could absolutely maul you with grappling early. But if he doesn't get you out of there, a guy like Johnson's just going to destroy him from range. And Michael Johnson is phenomenal takedown defense. We're talking about 81% takedown defense in a sample size of 68 takedown attempts against. His fights stay standing 81% of his UFC cage time, and he throws way more volume than Darrius Flowers. He's much faster, much more technical than Darrius Flowers is at range. But with Flowers, he's going to be very dangerous for the first 5 to 7 minutes of this fight. But as every minute that passes by that Flowers doesn't, either slam Johnson to the ground and break something or, break his fist off on his face, I think Johnson's going to kind of take over this fight as it goes on. And I could even see him getting an early finish because I just don't see Flowers as being a really good striker. I just see him as a guy who has a puncher's chance early and who can, just really out wrestle certain people that can't really wrestle very well.
Yeah, not for long. If he's going to wrestle, it's probably not for long. That doesn't have the cardio too. So yeah, I mean, Flowers has been finished 6 times. He got finished in the second round by Jake Matthews. Got finished another time in the second round by guillotine choke. Got finished in the first round by a key lock. Got knocked out in the second round. Got submitted by a arm triangle choke in the third round of a fight, and then got submitted in the first round rear naked choke. So this guy loves to get finished. So yeah, maybe. Yep.
I said that he was like Trevor Peek without the heart, the durability, or the conditioning.
So not Trevor Peek.
Yeah, but but like he's just.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, like Peek can keep going at that pace for 15 minutes, and he'll be tired, but he'll keep throwing, and he'll rather die than let you finish him. Darrius will go up until he's out of energy, and then when he's out of energy, he realizes that it's over for him, and he'll let you finish him.
He looks for the door. Like he is the definition of looking for the door.
Absolutely. So yeah, fight doesn't go to decision here is a great parlay piece, but I have a feeling we're not going to get a great price on it. No. Darrius Flowers has been finishing 100% of his losses and he's finished 75% of his wins. So yeah, I'm looking for someone who can finish here.
The under 1.5 opened up at plus 140. That's not terrible, but it's minus 125 now, which probably still not terrible, but it's Michael Johnson. I don't know. So yep, I lean some type of violence, but I don't really love the under 1.5. I would like more of like a 2.5. I don't think Flowers is going 12.5 minutes really against anybody in the UFC.
Yeah, agreed, man. And here's what I did, Brady. You know, like I really think that Michael Johnson's just a way better fighter than Darius Flowers. And I'm fully aware that if I were to bet on Michael Johnson on this fight, that yeah, it could absolutely go tits up early. Johnson or Flowers could come forward with like a 7 punch combination and just flatline him. Or he could get a takedown and break something, you know. But the thing is, I don't want to lay juice on Michael Johnson. So here's what I did. I took that minus 130 price tag and I parlayed it with Bolaji OG, got it to plus 145. And then now I can say, if this goes tits up and Johnson winds up sleeping in the first, I could say, hey, at least I didn't lay juice on him, because laying juice on Michael Johnson is terrifying. But, you know, so I parlayed him, not because I think Johnson's a parlay piece. It's just so I can say that I didn't lay juice on Michael Johnson. So I bet him up. I got 1.5 units at plus 142 on DraftKings when I parlayed Johnson and Oki.
All right. At least you're not laying juice on him.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on my like no bet list for a long time, but I get it. I mean, he should beat he's so much better than this guy. But Michael Johnson is going to Michael Johnson, so we'll see if he gets it. But I'm more so interested in violence myself. We'll see where they open up some odds throughout the week. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have Brad Tavares going against Gregory Rodrigues. We got Brad Tavares, 36 years old, 6'1", with a 74-inch reach. Rodrigues, 31 years old, 6'3", with a 75-inch reach. Rodrigues, 5 years younger, 2-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. Brad Tavares, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Antonio Carlos Jr., decision win against Omari Akhmedov, a decision loss against Dricus du Plessis, a knockout loss against Bruno Silva, and then a decision win against Chris Weidman. As far as Gregory Rodrigues, he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Decision loss against Armen Petrosyan, knockout win against Julian Marquez, Chidi Njokwani, knockout loss to Bruno Ferreira, and then a knockout win against Dennis Tuoluen. So, yeah, I mean, I think Brad Tavares should be ashamed of himself for his last performance against Chris Weidman. I mean, what the heck was that, Brad Tavares? I mean, that he should have went out there and finished what 41-year-old Chris Weidman has been finishing all of his losses. He hurt him a couple times, but kind of let him off the hook. And the fight was like weirdly competitive at times. Just a weird fight, Brad Tavares versus Chris Weidman. I think it's a tough matchup for Tavares here. Rodrigues, I think, is a good fighter. The problem with Rodrigues has always been like the chin, the durability. This guy has been knocked out quite a few times. He's been hurt quite a few times. Bruno Ferreira knocked him out. He's been knocked out again. You know, Jordan Williams knocked him out. He's been knocked out a couple times outside the UFC. He's not going to worry about that here. I mean, if Tavares isn't finishing a 40-year-old Chris Weidman, he's not finishing Gregory Rodrigues. I think it's a striker versus striker matchup. Obviously, Rodrigues has a BJJ black belt, phenomenal elite grappler. Doesn't use it at all. I don't expect it to here. And even if he does, Brad Tavares has elite takedown defense. I just think there's a significant gap in the power. One of these guys has power. One of these guys is dangerous. And one of these guys just is not. So on top of that, Rodrigues is 5 years younger on paper. I think he's lying. I mean, there's no way this guy's 31 years old. Maybe times it by 2 and you'll get his actual age, because this guy is not 31. So I kind of disagree with that. I don't think he's 31, but on paper he is for what it's worth. I like Rodrigues here, and he is, let's see, minus 225. So minus 225, maybe a parlay piece for me. I just think he gets it done. And then maybe even a knockout prop. Brad Tavares is tough, but the dude's been knocked out 4 times. So give me Rodrigues here. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a stand-up battle, you know, because we know that Gregory Rodrigues is probably the better grappler here. He's definitely more likely to wrestle, but you're not taking down Brad Tavares unless you're an elite wrestler or you're just a relentless one, which Rodrigues is neither. You're not getting this to the ground. So, and Tavares he's got 5 takedowns in 18 UFC fights. So we know Tavares isn't going to wrestle. So yeah, this fight's going to take place on the feet and on the cage. And Gregory Rodrigues, like you said, Brady, he's got more power. He's landed 4 knockdowns in 7 fights, while Tavares has only landed 3 knockdowns in 18 fights. So actually, Rodrigues has 1 more knockdown in 11 less fights. So he's definitely a power differential here. there's definitely an output differential, as Rodrigues is attempting almost 12 distance strikes per minute, while Tavares is attempting about 10. Rodrigues has been more accurate, but it's Tavares who's more defensively responsible. Tavares has fought the better brand of competition, and obviously he's more experienced. But Greg, I think the power differential, the output differential, the submission grappling differential, should this thing get into the grappling exchanges, is going to be Rodrigues, who's probably a lot more dangerous there. So I'm leaning him to win this fight. And, and plus you're getting the younger fighter. With Tavares, you got a guy who's got a ton of tread, off of those tires, over 300 minutes of cage time, 230 minutes of UFC octagon time. So, yeah, I like the younger guy that throws more, that has more power, and that's the more dangerous grappler here. But this, if this just winds up being a striking battle for 15 minutes, it could be very close, because Tavares is a solid minute winner at distance. Dude, he's above average with accuracy, above average with defense. He's got a little bit of power, and he's very durable.
Yep. Rodrigues minus 225, Tavares plus 190. They're scared to put out a total. They're terrified, so they haven't done it yet. So I think that's the only fight I think without a total for some reason.
You'd think that they would be a lot more scared to put out a total on some of these other fights than a Tavares Rodrigues fight. It's a pretty tame total to open, I would think.
You would think, but they're not doing it.
Oh well, we'll figure it out when it comes out. But yeah, I think we both like Rodrigues here.
Yep. Don't hate him. Don't hate him whatsoever in this spot. All right, a couple more fights to go. We have Robert Bryczek going against Ihor Potieria. We got Bryczek, 33 years old, 6 foot. We got Potieria, 27 years old, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. Potieria, 6 years younger, 3-inch height advantage, and not sure on the reach there as of yet. I'm shocked. I mean, it can change. It's still early. It's Sunday. We're doing the show on Sunday. This is a fight in the UFC on the main card. We've seen worse, I guess. We've seen like Carlos Felipe on a main card, but this is crazy. And it's a fun fight. Maybe that's why it's on the main card, but just these two names on the main card is kind of ridiculous to me. Yeah, I went and watched the last 5-6 fights at Bryczek, and it's all the same thing, dude. He comes out, pressures forward, stalks his opponent, and knocks him out. That's it. All 4, 5, 6 of his fights, they look the exact same, the same exact outcome. He comes forward without a care in the world, and he takes their heads off. He has some brutal knockouts. He's sleeping guys, a ton of power, and I love this matchup. This matchup's very fun. This matchup should produce violence. Potieria is a guy that's going to kind of do the same thing. He wants to go out there and he wants to throw down. And shout out to Potieria. I don't think he's that great. We all don't think he's that great, but he went out there and arguably could have won against Bolaji. That fight could have potentially been stopped. Who was reffing that fight? Jacob Montalvo. He could have stopped the fight. He was beating the living crap out of Bolaji on the ground. This guy was landing so many unanswered punches, hurting Bolaji so bad, and kind of blew his wad in the first round. Bolaji finished him in the second, but that was a good performance. He was a massive dog there. This is a fight where I just think they're going to go out there, stand in the middle, and bang until one man falls. I think it's a round one banger. I don't see this fight hitting the second round. The under 1.5 is juiced like it's a Terrence McKinney fight. This is the most violent fight on the card for me. I was really impressed with Bryczek, but Potieria, I don't think he's as bad as I once thought, but I still don't think he's that great. I don't know who I'm picking here, but there's a ton of money actually pouring in on Potieria, which is kind of interesting. We'll talk about the line, but I think I'll go with Bryczek just because Potieria is taking this fight on short notice, and Potieria is pretty hittable. What is Potieria? 42% strike and defense. I think I'm going to lean Bryczek first round knockout, but I don't have a strong take on the side. I just have a strong take on these guys swinging dicks. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, dude, this guy Bryczek is fun to watch, man. He is built like a brick shithouse. He has, some people will say in a very glib fashion that he's been taking steroids. I just think he's been saying his prayers and taking his vitamins. He's an absolute unit. His back is as big as a bus. And when he strikes, Brady, I mean, like, he's up on his toes. He's explosive. He's got kind of like a traditional martial arts, kind of like almost like a bladed stance, and he's very light on his feet for a guy that's as strong and has as much muscle on his frame as he does. And if you don't get this guy moving backwards, if you let Bryczek pressure you, he's going to explode in with, fast jabs that are powerful. His straight right down the pipe is nasty. Dude, he's got flatline power. But the thing about Potieria is, I think Potieria is going to go out there and pressure him. It's going to be an absolute car crash. This fight's going to finish in round 1. But I don't think you're going to get a good price on it. Potieria is taking this fight on short notice. And I was going to say the exact same thing. When Potieria fought Bellato, I had Bellato as Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And I mean, I got out the back door just in time on that one. That was a very lucky finish for Bellato, because like you said, I think a lot of refs would have stopped that fight. Potieria looked really good against Bellato. It was a career best performance. And, he beat Shogun Rua, and he lost to guys like Carlos Ulberg and Nikolai Negumereanu, who are tough matchups for anybody. So maybe this kid is better than we think he is. I'm willing to say that I was wrong about him in the Bellato fight, because he came out there and performed way better than I expected him to. So This is a fun fight, dude. Bryczek is a knockout artist, and he's got serious power. And Ihor Potieria, 15 knockout or 15 finish wins in 19 fights, and he's been finished by KO in 4 of his 5 losses. So we're going to see violence here. It's going to be a super fun fight. It's going to be a car crash. And on a lower level card like this, why not put this on the main card? I mean, there's no way that this fight's going to be boring.
Oh, no. This fight couldn't possibly be boring.
No, not with these guys. I mean, like, wait till you see this Bryczek. I mean, Christ, he looks like the poster boy for testosterone. He's just an absolute unit. But he's been fighting bums, so this is a step up in competition for him. And he got knocked out by a jab, by the way. Kayk Brito knocked him out with a jab on the regional scene. A guy that we saw recently, I think he lost to Prates, was it? I forget. Either way, no, it wasn't Prates, different weight classes. But Kayk Brito just lost recently on
Oban Elliott.
Oban Elliott, we're going to be seeing next week for UFC 298, the Welsh gangster. He's a fun fighter. But yeah, this is going to be a really fun fight. But I don't think I'm going to touch the money line here. And if I could find a parlay piece, maybe I'll parlay that under 1.5 with something at minus 260. Try to get something close to even money, put a unit on it or something.
Yeah, at first I saw the total, I was like, what the heck? Like, is Terrence McKinney fighting this weekend? But yeah, after watching Bryczek's last 5-6 fights, I 100% see why the total is completely juiced. It actually opened up juice at minus 220, and money still came in on that, and it's already Sunday. So yeah, I think it's just an absolute car crash, swing fest. Somebody's getting knocked out, and I think they're going to have to bring like the stretcher. I think somebody's getting brutally knocked out here, especially if it's Bryczek getting the knockout. This guy hits like a truck.
Dude, you want to talk about getting hit by a guy just full of steroids. You see these dudes that he knocked out in these last, like Chadwick and Drii and Strelzik and Oliveira. I mean, he left these dudes sleeping, and they're like audibly like going, oh, when they're on the ground. It's bad, dude. This guy Bryczek's got power for days. It's going to be a fun fight.
Yes, I can't wait for this one. And yeah, I get why it's on the main card. It's going to be fun. Bryczek opened up minus 275. He went to minus 190. Potieria opened up plus 235, currently plus 165. So yeah, a lot of early action on Potieria, which makes sense. I mean, Bryczek's extremely unproven, hasn't fought the best competition, and I think we're all in agreement that Potieria looked really good in the Bellato fight and could have won the fight. I mean, the ref could have stopped it. So I get why money's coming in on Potieria early on.
Yeah, and you know, Bryczek's a similar opponent to Bellato, the last opponent for Ihor, but it is short notice. We got to take into account short notice guy. He's going to be coming from Europe, I think, too. So you got to factor that in. While Bryczek's probably already in Vegas, or at least you would hope he is at this point.
Yep, 100%. All right, and Potieria coming down in weight.
Is this at 185?
This is at 185.
Yeah. Wow. I don't like that for Ihor because
Dude,
now
he's coming down in weight on short notice.
Short notice, and he's never fought at 185 before, and he does not look fat at 205. It's not like Ihor's fighting at 205 because he's lazy and not cutting weight.
So this fight's not happening. So this fight's not happening then. That's a big weight cut, dude. That's a big weight cut. 205 to 185.
And I think a lot of guys are calling in sick when they get matched up against Bryczek. Now that USADA's no longer around, I think they're, you know, like even Darrius was like, you know what? Sorry, I'm not showing up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of Ihor's record. He has he's fought at heavyweight. Gosh, really? I see like a middleweight fight in there.
Okay,
I don't see many. I see one. I see like one.
One, huh? Man,
going down and down. Yeah, not many. If maybe one or two at most.
Still, man, like I feel like most managers would be like, you want my guy to take a fight at 185 on 7 days notice when he's a 205er, you know, like that's just a tall ask. I'm gonna really want to see Ihor on the scale. Might be like prime time watching just to see what happens there.
Yeah, I want to see both guys on the scale because Ihor is obviously cutting down for the second time in his career to 185 on short notice. And I want to see Bryczek on the scale because maybe he looks like Lucas Bresky. Remember Lucas Bresky, that Sherdog picture where he was just looked like a freaking Calvin Klein model, and then he showed up, looked like I was like, who the heck is this guy? Who the heck is this guy? Maybe that's the case with Bryczek here with some where you in the UFC you can't really take steroids.
Yeah, dude, like remember because it was what's his name, the guy that you just mentioned, he tested positive for estrogen blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for estrogen blockers because he was coming off the steroids, you know, so he was blocking what they were looking for to find out when he was on them. So we knew that Bresky was a steroid user, and I mean, you could look at Bryczek and maybe guess that it could be a possibility that he's tried performance-enhancing drugs, but I'm not suggesting that, of course.
No. Who was the guy that was on Tiger Blood? Who was that guy?
Oh, that was he was on everything. Was it John Olan? I remember John Olan got a win and then like pissed hot for like literally. Oh no, Abdel Wahab. Hamdi Abdel Wahab was on like a cocktail of like 5 different anabolic steroids. It was
dude.
He took the fight on short notice, so I think he knew, like, oh, I'm gonna piss hot for sure. They suspended him for 2 years, Brady. That's how hot he pissed.
That's who's the guy that was he got caught for cocaine? Was that?
It was Ronderos. Yeah, man, he accepted the fight on a Wednesday and pissed hot for cocaine on Saturday, which means that you were high when you accepted the fight.
He must be living in Vegas.
I think he is. Yeah. I think he trains in Vegas, dude.
That makes sense then.
Yeah.
That's just hilarious. So we'll see. We'll see him. Have we seen Ronderos since then? I don't think we have.
Yeah, we saw him get his ass shaved by somebody real quick. Like he got just shaved. You know, but then he got some cocaine money and went and had a great party after the fight. Like, you know, you might not want to be in Ronderos's corner during the fight, but you want to be invited to the post-fight party. I'll tell you that.
This show took an unexpected turn. But it always does. So
it always does.
It always does. All right. We still have 2 more fights. The show's taking a while, but 14 fight card. What can you do? We have, I love this co-main event, man. We have Dan Ige going against Andre Fili. This fight is awesome. We got Dan Ige, 32 years old, 5'7" with a 71-inch reach. Andre Fili, 33 years old, 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Ige 1 year younger. Andre Fili with a 4-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. Dan Ige is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Decision loss against Josh Emmett. decision loss against Movsar Evloev, knockout win against Damon Jackson, decision win against Nate Landwehr, and then a decision loss against Bryce Mitchell his last time out. As far as Andre Fili, he is 2-1 no contest his last 5 fights. Had the no contest against Pineda on a fight. He was on his way to finishing him. Knockout loss against Joe Anderson Brito, decision win against Bill Algeo, decision loss against Nathaniel Wood, and then a knockout against Lucas Almeida. So I'm a big fan of really both these guys, but Dan Ige especially. One thing that stuck out is kind of this line. Like, this line surprises me. I thought this line would be a lot closer for a couple reasons. I think Dan Ige is typically really underrated by the market. Like, I remember, believe it or not, Dan Ige was almost a pick 'em against Damon Jackson. So that was kind of wild. And I thought, since Andre Fili did go out there and just put on a spectacular performance, this line would be much closer. But Dan Ige is almost minus 200. I thought that was pretty interesting there. So yeah, it's a fight where I think it's a striker versus striker matchup. I think Andre Fili, this guy, like, he has wrestling in his back pocket. The problem with Fili is it just doesn't look like he wants to use that wrestling. He hasn't wrestled in a very long time. The last time he did go out there with a wrestling heavy game plan was back in like 2019, 2020 against Charles Jourdain. And these days, he just kind of wants to go out there and stand and bang. And I'm not sure that's the best idea against Dan Ige. Dan Ige has a ton of power. This guy, I feel like he should have more knockouts, but he drops a lot of guys. He hurt Bryce Mitchell a couple times. He dropped Nate Landwehr a couple times. He had that early knockout against Gavin Tucker and Damon Jackson, but this guy hits very, very hard. And Andre Fili, he's very, very hittable, and he's been finished quite a bit. So I like Dan Ige here, but again, I'm kind of surprised the line is this wide. I thought more love would be on Fili, which there is still time, but right now Fili's plus 165, and that surprises me after he starched Lucas Almeida, who I actually like. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this co-main event, other than it's going to be an absolute banger?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun fight, and this is a good matchmaking. They're well-matched guys. They both strike a lot more than they grapple. They're both dangerous on the feet. Ige's incredibly durable. I mean, the guy is just one of the most durable guys in the UFC. Fought some really tough competition. He's never been finished in 24 professional fights and 7 losses. The guys that he's lost to in the UFC, you sum up their records, 37 wins and 18 losses. So, he's fighting guys that are, 2 wins for every loss. He's a good fighter, and he's got a ton of power. Fili, 10-5 overall in decisions. Both of these guys, Fili 7-5 in decisions, Ige 5-6 in decisions. These guys have fought a similar level of competition. Ige's wins just a little bit better than Fili's. Yeah, these guys are really well matched. I'm going to be looking for where the Dan Ige finish only prop opens.
Yes.
I wasn't going to mention it, because sometimes it seems like whenever we mention a finish only prop on this show, like, we throw tomatoes at the screen when we see where it opens. But I mean, they're going to be onto this, and it's going to be expensive. But Dan Ige's durability is unmatched. And Fili's been finished a lot. He has been finished in 4 of his 9 UFC losses, 5 of his 10 pro losses. So, and we've seen him get knocked out, especially that Joe Anderson Brito one was nasty. So, yeah, kind of like Ige here. I think that actually, if somebody's going to have success with the wrestling, it'll be Fili.
Yeah.
And maybe he can win some minutes with it, because he's just proven that he can do that. He gets his takedowns at 48% Fili, and it's only 22% takedown accuracy for Ige. Neither one of these guys is the most efficient grappler. Neither one of them is the best minute winner really anywhere. I mean, you add up their decisions, and they're 12-11 in decisions in the UFC. So I kind of just feel like the reason the line is the way it is on Ige is because he's probably the guy that has all the finishing equity. And when you leave it to who's going to win the minutes of this fight, that's kind of a toss-up. So I don't know if we've got really an edge here either way, Brady, on this money line. But I think this fight probably goes over. But if it doesn't, it's probably going to be Dan Ige getting the finish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to have to maybe take a shot on the Dan Ige by knockout prop. I bet it against Damon Jack. I got Dan Ige inside the distance versus Damon Jackson at something stupid, like plus 280 against Damon Jackson. That was incredible. I bet the knockout prop against Nate Landwehr, close close. He dropped him twice. Ige has power, man. I think this fight is probably going to come down to two things, and that's striking defense, and that's durability. And Andre Fili just has none of that. I mean, Andre Fili is very, very hittable on the feet, and I do question the chin quite a bit as well. So, yeah, give me the more durable fighter of Dan Ige, minus 190. Don't really love that. Because like you said, the minute winning should be fairly competitive. And in theory, Fili, if he wants to, I mean, Dan Ige's been taken down a ton by good guys, but taken down a ton nonetheless. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over is juiced minus 185. I would not lay an over here. I think these guys are going to stand and bang, man. But I kind of think Ige's alive for a knockout. At the very least, I think he knocks him down. So we'll see what happens there. You said you like the over potentially?
I don't love it though, because like you say, I mean, Fili can be finished. What I like is the finish only prop, but I think it'll probably be around minus 250 or something like that.
If we're lucky. If we're lucky. Yeah, I was thinking minus 250, maybe minus 300. We'll see what they put it out.
Yeah, we'll see, man. You know, you never know. You never know, but this is a great fight, and I think it'll be close as long as Ige's not landing big shots on the feet. I think it'll be very close because neither one of these guys is the best minute winner.
100%. All right, we did it. We got to the main event. If you guys have not already, be sure to smash the like button. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. We go live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Every Sunday other than next week where there is the Super Bowl going on. Good amount of people in here on a Sunday. It's been a while since we've had this big of a crowd with football going on, so nice to have a lot of people in here, and I think that's going to continue, so love to see that. So yeah, we got a very fun fight here. I had a fun time breaking this down. I did a video on my channel before the show. We got Joe Pyfer going against Jack Hermansson. We got Joe Pyfer, 27 years old, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. Jack Hermansson, 35 years old, 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. Joe Pyfer is 8 years younger. He's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Jack Hermansson is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Decision loss against Marvin Vettori. Decision win against Edmund Shabazian. Decision loss against Sean Strickland. Decision win against Chris Curtis, and then a knockout loss against Roman Dolidze. Jack Hermansson, it's been a little bit of a layoff. I think it's been like either a year and a month or a year and 2 months since we've last seen Jack Hermansson. And the last time we did see him, I mean, he got TKO'd by Roman Dolidze. It was probably one of the more interesting finishes I've ever seen in the UFC. It was like a calf slicer into a TKO. It was an incredible finish by Roman Dolidze. But that was the last time we did see Jack Hermansson. I know you're a big fan of Joe Pyfer, Weezy. How can you not be? I'm a big fan of Joe Pyfer. What made me a fan of this guy's? First of all, I've made a ton of money on this guy's fights thus far in the UFC. In the Alan Amedovski fight, the under was juiced, but I mean, that was a very good bet. That came through for me. And what made me a fan of Joe Pyfer is he does a show with Sean Brady every week. And I went and watched that show to see if he said anything about the fight with Gerald Meerschaert. And he said something along the lines of, I bet my life on the knockout prop. And I'm like, hold up. Did he just say he bet his life? Because I've heard people say, oh, I'm going to knock this guy out. I'm going to sub this guy, right? I've never heard somebody say, I bet my life on a knockout prop. Like if I don't knock him out, I'm going to die. I mean, that spoke to me. Ended up betting the knockout prop. Ended up betting the first round knockout prop for Pyfer. So that made me a fan. And then what also made me a fan was I cashed Pyfer round 2 sub against Abdulrazak Al-Hassan at something stupid, probably like close to 30-1. So that made me a fan as well. This is a big step of a competition, man. I mean, Joe Pyfer is going from Meerschaert, Amedovski, Osman Diaz, Abdulrazak Al-Hassan to Jack Hermansson, who I think is a very underrated fighter. I've always been a big fan of Jack Hermansson. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's fought the who's who. He's been 25 minutes 3 different times. This guy's tough. This guy is an underrated striker. I think Jack Hermansson's striking is very, very good. I love the volume, and his grappling's very good. His ground and pound's very good. He's a very good fighter. It's just, 35 years old, almost 36 years old at this point. A little bit of a layoff. And he's going against Joe Pyfer, who this guy hits like a truck. Joe Pyfer hits very hard. I could see a potential knockout here. I don't think Jack Hermansson has the best wrestling, but you gotta, man, I have concerns about this price tag for Pyfer because, Weezy, what happens if this fight reaches the 3rd and, God forbid, the 4th or 5th round? What does Pyfer look like? What happens if this fight reaches the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round and Jack Hermansson gets on top? Jack's proven he can go 5 rounds, or Pyfer really hasn't. Ultimately, I did take Pyfer by knockout, and I will be looking at the knockout prop, but I don't know if I want to lay minus 225, because at the end of the day, Jack Hermansson is a very well-proven fighter and a very good fighter nonetheless. I love this main event, and I'm looking to see if Joe Pyfer can pass this test, because it is a test. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I love the main event. And, I mean, obviously they're fast tracking Joe Pyfer. This is a guy who's, he's got an aura about him. They really like him. They love the way that he fights. And why wouldn't they? He looks to go out there and finish fights and do it in violent fashion. And he's got good grappling and very dangerous striking. But yeah, like you said, man, he's taken a very big step up in competition here against Jack Hermansson, a guy with 16 UFC fights, 171 minutes in the octagon, and it is a step up. Look, Pyfer, if you add up the records of the guys that he's fought in the UFC, there's 16 wins and 19 losses. If you add up the records of the guys that Hermansson has fought, it's 127 wins and 91 losses. So Hermansson's fighting the much more experienced competition. He's fighting the guys with the much better win-loss ratios. And we know that Jack can go out there and fight really smart game plans and frustrate opponents like he did in the Chris Curtis fight. He can go out there and surprise you with his grappling and submission skills like he did in the Kelvin Gastelum fight. And he's got some of the best ground and pound in the entire UFC. So this guy is a very scary guy to have on top of you. In addition, Joe Pyfer has less than 80 minutes of professional cage time, and that's in 14 fights. So this guy's average fight time is 5.66 minutes. This is a 25-minute fight, and Joe Pyfer has been to one decision in his entire career. So we definitely have to ask ourselves, if we're going to lay that money on Pyfer, right? Going to say, what happens if this fight gets out around 2, let's say? Because that's going to be uncharted territory, while we've seen Jack Hermansson go 3 times to decision at the UFC level in 5-round fights. So, but there's the, this feels like one of those bets that, as the type of person that likes to take these plus money spots, find these spots where somebody has an experience advantage, a strength to schedule advantage, in my opinion, maybe a grappling advantage here, and say, I'm going to get plus 180 on this guy. And then he winds up sleeping 2.5 minutes into the fight because Joe Pyfer's got next level power. Yeah. And it just looks like this guy's fast track to be top 10 in the division. And it looks like he has the skills to do that. And he's a very likable fighter to get behind. He's a scrappy dude. He's got I would say a great story, but he's really got an awful story. The guy's been through a ton of shit. And he's persevered through that, which is about as inspiring as it gets, because, not many people have put up with the kind of things that Joe Pyfer has put up with in his life. He's really been put through the ringer and abuse. And he's come out the other side and crafting himself into a champion mixed martial artist at the UFC level. So, yeah, really rough backstory, but this guy persevering through that is the kind of guy that people are going to root for here. And he really does look like he's got the skills to pay the bills at this level. Serious power, pretty good wrestling and grappling where he can win minutes with that as well. A solid submission game. He's training with some real killer grapplers. And just that guy that would go out there and kill somebody if it means that that's what he needs to do to feed his family. So, yeah, I like Pyfer here, but I think there are going to be some value boys on Hermansson, and it makes sense why they would do that. More experience, strength to schedule advantage. He's actually got a 2-inch reach advantage in this spot, and his top game is absolutely scary, and we know what he looks like in the 3rd round, in the 4th round, in the 5th round against UFC level competition. So there's reasons to like both fighters, but I think if I were to bet this Pyfer side, I'd just want to be like, hey, let me get that 1st, 2nd, 3rd round prop on FanDuel, and let's see if that prop is a lot closer to plus 100 than the minus 220 money line.
Yeah, Pyfer hasn't been to a 3rd round in like 6 years.
Yeah, that's a big unknown.
Yeah, and only been to a 3rd round once in his pro career. A lot of 2nd round finishes, a lot of 1st round finishes. But yeah, if this fight does reach the 3rd round, it could get very, very interesting. But yeah, I think Pyfer's, at least early on, I think Pyfer is the one that's more likely to get on top. Jack Hermansson, love the guy, but he's not a good wrestler. 29% takedown accuracy. I don't see him taking down Pyfer. So yeah, I think if somebody's getting on top early on, it's Pyfer. And then I think on the feet, although I think Hermansson could potentially do very well, maybe even win some minutes, it's the power of Pyfer. And it only takes one. This guy stalks you, and this guy has unreal power. Jack Hermansson's been knocked out before. A couple times in the UFC. Marvin Vettori even dropped this. Marvin Vettori almost finished this guy in the first round of their 5-round fight as well. So, yep, I like Pyfer as well. Going to be looking at the props from a totals perspective. They open up the under 2.5 at +100. Like that's not bad for a Joe Pyfer fight. This guy hasn't been over 2.5 rounds in 6 years. I would have not mind the under 2.5 at +100, -130. I still don't think it's terrible, but yeah, I think if this fight does end under 2.5 rounds, it's probably the Pyfer side. I don't know if Jack's finishing this guy early on in the fight. Any thoughts on that total?
Yeah, I like the under. I mean, it's a Joe Pyfer fight, like you said, and we've seen Jack Hermansson be finished in 4 of his 6 UFC losses. So it's not like the guy has got this next level durability that you got to worry about Pyfer landing big and him just eating it like a flapjack. So yeah, I think that the under is pretty good here for this fight. Yeah, this is a fun main event. I hope Joe Pyfer takes the next step, but this is going to be, a win that you don't want to underrate if he's able to go out there and get it, because Jack Hermansson's a good fighter.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jack Hermansson. Honestly, one of my favorite fighters. I like this guy. I think he's always been super underrated. Good personality as well, but yeah, I think it's probably Pyfer's time at this point. So we're gonna to end the show. He says, "Can you name the fighters who could be parlay pieces and rank them?" So I'll let you go first, Weezy. Give your probably top 3 or 4 favorite parlay pieces.
Okay, so a parlay, I think a great parlay piece for this week would be the under 1.5 rounds for what
I
fight
think
were we talking?
he said fighters, but
Well, that's a fight, and that's a parlay piece for me. It's the under one. What fight was it? Why am I not seeing it here? It's one of the ones that it's the Bryczek Potieria fight. So
yeah, the
that
under
would
one
be
half.
a parlay piece right there. I also like Bolaji Oki as a parlay piece this week. A lot of people like Daniel Marcos as a parlay piece. And man, I think Prates is going to beat Giles, but I don't know if I'd parlay him. And like I say, if you want to bet that under at -130, just parlay it with Oki like I did. That way you could say if you lose, hey, you didn't lay juice, So
Yeah.
that's the same thing with Michael Johnson, that in my opinion, he's kind of a parlay piece because you can get him to plus money, and then you could say that you didn't lay juice on Michael Johnson. But yeah, for me, it's Oki. It's probably Marcos and Prates, and then definitely that Bryczek under 1.5 rounds.
Yeah, I probably won't have a parlay on this card, but if I was to parlay, I really like Gregory Rodrigues, honestly, as a parlay piece. Daniel Marcos, I think, is a good parlay piece, and then I'd say okay. I'd say those are my top 3, and then if we're talking props, absolutely that Bryczek under 1.5, I think, is a solid parlay piece as well. Terrifying to lay -260 on an under, but after you watch Bryczek, you'll definitely see why this guy is terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. He is really fun to watch, and Potieria, he's fun to watch too. So
Yeah.
as low level as that fight is, as inexperienced those guys are at the UFC level, it's going to be a fun fight. And why not put that fight on the main card on this particular card where you don't have all this, outside the main card, with Vieira, Petrosyan, Johnson, Flowers, Tavares, Rodrigues, Ihor, Fili, and Hermansson, Pyfer. There's not big names on this card, so
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Before we go, can we get a shout out to Mr. Oh, did you see that? Diego Lopez and Mosver Evloev are going back and forth today. And Lopez called Evloev Mr. Decision. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah,
They're talking shit to each other.
I saw that too, and yeah, I enjoyed that because I had the max bet on Arnold Allen finish
Mhm.
only prop because I'm like Mavzar Evloev can't even finish a banana in the morning.
Mr. Decision.
He switched to decaf. Did you hear that? Because he said that the caffeinated coffee makes him too jittery in the morning. So I'm like, this guy's not finishing anybody. When I heard,
Wait, are you being serious?
Dude, he's drinking Sanka. I heard that. I've got sources, Brady. This man drinks Sanka, and he's in his 20s. He's not finishing anybody. Lopez was dead on, and that's why everybody loved that tweet.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Weezy, we did it. We are 2 hours and 15 minutes. And any final thoughts on the card, and also your plans for some content? We are like 2 weeks in, and for I think we have like 11 or 10 or 11 more events. So lots more content coming your way. Weezy, let people know.
Yeah, so you can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time, I'll do a full card breakdown. Wednesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time, I'll do Ask Weezy. And then Wednesday at 8 o'clock on Pub Sports Radio right here, we're going to do the DFS show with Brady and Gordo and Monk, give you our DFS picks for the week. My DFS lineup last week, Brady, was awful. I think I scored 150 points.
Yeah.
I think 5 losers. Maybe even 6 losers.
There were 6.
It was 6?
Yeah, you went from first place to, I think, third.
Yeah, I was first place in the contest. Now I'm in third. Got outscored by like 300 points by Gordo. It all fell apart like a Chinese motorcycle. But either way, man, I'm ready for this week. I'm fired up for this week. Gonna tread lightly on a card like this. This is not the kind of card where you want 20% of your bankroll at risk. So looking to finish up researching this card. I'll have some content out for you later on in the week, and let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 86.
Yep, time to turn the wagon around, right? Is that what you said?
Damn right. We got to circle these wagons. We got to circle the fucking wagons, Brady, and get it going. Get a couple wins stacked up here in a row.
Yep, looking for a 2-event win streak. And I was joking with you earlier. I'm like, dude, 1 unit, Bryczek, Ihor, fight doesn't go, minus 600. Call it a night, winning night, moving on. Let's go.
We're going to be on to a 3-week winning streak next week. It's the betting hack from Brady, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. It's just 1 unit on the fight doesn't go to win 0.13 units. Let's get it. $13. You go get a sub at Subway. $13.
Yeah, and you even get a little bit of pocket change back. You could even get a beverage with that. Maybe even get the combo meal with a sack of chips.
Okay.
Let's do
Sounds
it.
Good to me. Maybe get a meatball sub.
Yeah, meatball sub. That's the way to go. There you go.
Shout Molly. Fun show. If you guys could on your way out, subscribe. I posted a main event breakdown and prediction, breaking down the main event, talking some betting perspective as well. Tomorrow, my full card breakdown video will be out. And I want to look a little bit more into the Prates fight. And then there was one other fight I wanted to look into a little bit more. But other than that, got most of the research done. That'll be out tomorrow. And then just the usual content, live stream on Pub Sports Radio, Wednesday DFS show, Friday for the final thoughts, and then Saturday for the best bet show as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and best of luck for UFC Vegas 86. We'll see you soon.